Okay, welcome everyone to the February 13th Town of Lewisboro Town Board meeting. February 13th. For those in the room, we have an exit towards the front of the building and an exit to the rear. If you will, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is the approval of the consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, communications, sorry. I jumped ahead of myself. So for communications, I actually, did you want to read? The other one that you have is for comments. Kathy?
Okay.
So if you want to read that.
We have a letter from Ann Wallace Douglas Cornell, and she prefaces the letter by saying, "I would like to have the enclosed letter read at the meeting and would very much like to be able to comment on Zoom if there are questions. As I am in Bethesda, Maryland on Monday, I encourage the board to welcome all comments, both by those in person as well as by those on Zoom. Many people are still reluctant to attend meetings or outings. Some might have physical challenge, some might have young children at home and are so unable to attend in person. All citizens should have their concerns and civil voices heard." Thank you, Ann Cornell. And this is her official letter to town officials. In 1974, my grandmother, is it Ilo Wallace, gifted 4.2 acres of land from Parview Farm to the town of Lewisboro in honor of her husband, Henry A. Wallace, to be used as a nature preserve and a buffer zone for other town properties. The supervisor at the time, Alvin R. Jordan, had written to my grandmother in 1973 and 1974 to ask if she would be interested in selling the parcel, and stated in his letter, I quote, "It is needed to provide proper drainage and as a space for landscaping and screening. Since this area is adjacent to the approach to this hamlet of South Salem, we wish to do an extensive landscaping project as soon as possible to establish the beautiful site and totally block out the future highway garage area, which will be at the rear of the property," end quote. Though funds had been set aside to purchase the property, my grandmother generously donated the property. The deed of the property was conveyed to the Nature Conservancy with the intent of donating the same property to the town of Lewisboro, subject to stringent restrictions listed in the deed. And here is a quote of the restrictions. "This conveyance is made subject to the express condition and limitation that the premises herein conveyed shall forever be held as a nature preserve for scientific, educational, and aesthetic purposes, and shall be kept entirely in their natural state without any disturbance whatever of habitat or plant or animal populations, exciting the undertaking of scientific research and the maintenance of such fences and foot trails as may be appropriate to effectuate the foregoing purposes without impairing the essential natural character of the premises. Should the premises cease to be used solely as provided herein, the estate hereby granted the town of Lewisboro may be terminated by the Nature Conservancy under the power of termination in the nature of right of entry for a condition broken or executory interest." Thank you for your patience with my mispronunciation. In appreciation, the Lewisboro Town Board, represented by Alvin R. Jordan, supervisor, expressed with gratitude in a letter to Ilo Wallace, stating that the property would be held forever by the town as a, quote, nature and wildlife preserve in the memory of your beloved husband and our friend and neighbor, the Honorable Henry A. Wallace. Quoted in the Reporter Dispatch, Mr. Jordan states, "While it is very nice this land can be useful to us, it is most important that it is always preserved as a natural open space in our town. It has been almost 50 years since the land was donated, and there has never been any effort to create a nature preserve, or at the bare minimum to landscape it, to protect it from contamination from the neighboring salt dome. The property where the salt dome is located has been the site of an illegal logging operation for years before it was brought to the attention of the town by concerned residents. There is a large pile of mulch with smoke rising from it, as well as a hill of dumped millings, and it is worrisome that the cell phone tower in its vicinity is being considered. I feel deeply that our family's stewardship of Farview Farm has been dedicated to preserving the valuable green spaces of South Salem and to ensuring that the use of water resources on our property adhere to the strict environmental guidelines of New York. While we no longer own the land deeded to the town, it is discouraging that the town of Lewisboro has not been a conscientious steward of this property, or respectful of the stringent restrictions of the deed, which includes a reverter clause in case they are not followed. If almost 50 years ago, the small parcel was considered so valuable by the town that one official proclaimed it the gateway to South Salem, the first welcoming site to visitors, I urge the current town council to also treat it with the same respect and appreciation as did the town officials who came before them. Thank you. Signed, Ann Wallace Douglas Cornell. And I answered Ms. Cornell and let her know that we would be taking care of it, that I would hopefully be able to encourage everyone to join together and clean it up and restore it to the beauty that it once had and preserve it for our future. And I believe that Ms. Cornell was happy with my response. I pointed out that we did a great deal of work at the Vista Park, and it was a great caring for the community event. And hopefully our next caring for the community event could be at this parcel of land.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, I have one communication here. This is from New York State DOT. We received this on February 6th, and it's regarding the paving project in town. Dear Supervisor Gonsalves, this is to inform the town of Lewisboro that the New York State Department of Transportation plans to resurface portions of routes 35 and Route 121. The Route 35 portion of project will begin at Old Shop Road. The project continues to the east side of the intersection with 121. The Route 121 portion of the project will begin at the intersection of Route 35. It will end south of the John Jay Middle School. A location map is enclosed for your convenience. The project will begin in the summer construction season of 2023. The project is limited in scope and will involve milling of the existing roadway surface, resurfacing with a single course asphalt overlay. The project will also include shoulder repairs, restoration of the pavement markings, and some drainage repairs. This project is to be constructed during the daytime hours. If you have any concerns about this work, please feel free to contact me at provided a phone number. And this is from Eric Falconer, who's a project manager with the Transportation Maintenance Group.
So once that's scheduled, we're going to get a heads up so we can advise all the Cross River businesses to plan accordingly.
Right. So once we get closer, we'll get a schedule from them. Like they say, it's going to be constructed during daytime hours. And here's a map, but I will post this on the website and we will make sure it goes out on our town email.
And there were discussions around the obvious need in the area for crosswalks or, safety.
Right. So a few town board meetings ago, we passed a resolution requesting that they go ahead and perform a pedestrian safety study. That is the first step in them considering crosswalks. So the request is for them to put crosswalks in that intersection.
Okay. So do we think that the study will be done in time to?
That I don't know. So
Scope?
yeah, that I don't know. I put in the request such that the work gets done in conjunction with the paving project. They were going to get back to me and I have not heard back.
Okay.
From them. So I'll follow up.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I have two communications.
Okay.
One was to the town board from Joanne Ames. Dear Lewisboro Town Board members, my name is Joanne Ames and I live at 13 Hall Avenue, Golden's Bridge. I'm writing in disagreement with the decision to stop participants via Zoom from speaking during public comments. I have an adult disabled son who can't make the meetings but participates via Zoom, YouTube as paratransit stops running at 7 p.m. and the bus doesn't run near the location. Since COVID, life has changed for all, and having Zoom option is a great way for the homebound, aging, disabled families with childcare issues, et cetera, to be part of the town meetings that they have a right to partake in. I would like to thank Andrea Rendo, Dan Welsh, and Richard Squaren for voting yes and asking others to reconsider your vote. Thank you for your time and service to the town of Lewisboro. Happy and healthy New Year to all of you and your families. May 2023 be the good change Lewisboro deserves. Have a blessed and good week. That was from Joanne. There are a few more like that. I'm just going to read the one.
Did they request that it be read?
No.
I mean, you could read them, but they usually,
No, there was
They
addressed to the
request, okay.
entire town board and
Right.
not just me. So
okay.
there were several others like that, like those
Yeah.
that the town board received. So I just
Okay.
wanted people.
Do you want to read more or?
Well, there's another one from Todd Gardner. That was addressed directly to you, but
Mhm.
CC to us. I was appalled at your treatment of your fellow board members over your mandate to cancel public commentary from Zoom meeting attendees. You spoke about public bullying and harassment from folks and then turned around and did exactly that to the other members with dismissive rhetoric and constant interruption. I strongly encourage you to rethink this idea. Why can you not enforce restrictions on public comment, on public comments who abuse the rules? If they abuse the commentary rules, block them from future commentary. If this town needs anything, it is more transparency, not less. I voted for you. Disappointed Todd Gardner.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to consent agenda, a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Oh, actually, one comment. We did not receive a police department report, so
Oh,
it's only for the building department. So
yeah.
motion to approve consent agenda minus the police.
Didn't we receive it
I thought we did.
in the email from the?
I have, I guess a comment question about the building department.
Sure, go ahead.
Just take a look at the numbers each month, and I was just the number for January. The revenue generated from the building department is significantly lower than it's been. The lowest it's been in a couple of years. I don't know, I guess two parts to my question. The first is that just aberrational of where we're going, and do we know? And does that include our outside, vendor that we brought in? Does that number include that figure?
So the answer to that question is no. These are actual receipts that come in with applications. And I did ask the building department, so it is lower than the prior 2 years, which were, we'll call them COVID years, where there was an increased number of applications, but also in 2022, we had Mercedes in there, and those fees were substantial. So that's one of the reasons you have.
The discrepancy.
Not a discrepancy, but a difference.
Difference.
Yeah,
But
So,
you're saying that the outside services are not included in here,
correct,
oh, okay.
correct.
so where does that get captured to revenue wise?
That would be on the expense side, so it's not reflected on this. These are receipts, this is income that comes into the
Well,
building.
we also have to take into consideration that when we're paying the outside consultant, the fee to the outside consultant comes out of the fees that come in. Is that not correct?
Yes,
Correct.
that's-
So
Yes.
as a result, our receipts are less because in the interim, we're paying.
But that's
for
not
someone else.
reflected here.
Well, no,
So-
what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that part of the reason why the number's lower?
No.
Because we're paying that.
Like I said, that this is pure application. When people submit an application, submit a check with it,
Got
that's income.
So,
Right.
so how can we, because we've had the outside consultant, I guess, for a couple of months.
Since
now.
November 26th. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 months.
So I started calculating those numbers. I don't have them ready. But I do have the numbers in terms of what, since we enrolled them for the months of, since November 26th to the end of December. I didn't capture January yet.
Okay, and that's something that the controller would put together, I guess, at our request?
Yeah, I'm actually going to put that together. I'm going to present it at a future meeting.
You're gonna put it, okay,
Yeah.
just maybe ask the controller to put that together for us, maybe present that.
You could. You know, the controller can certainly put that together. But it's part of the, the building department reports. I already have the numbers from the building department for that. And basically, just to give you an idea, it cost us about $10,000 to get rid of our backlog and process all the open applications, not taking into account the revenue that have come in associated with those applications.
Right, that was the basis of my question, if
Yeah.
it was including that or not.
It-
So I know the
This does
margin would
not,
be-
this does not include that.
Right, I know, so again,
That's the answer to your question.
right, so
Yeah.
that's why, and I know the margin would be less, but that's why it's a kind of distorted number, because it's not including that.
Well,
Well,
But
these
the-
numbers never include expenses. But
That's
it doesn't
right.
include
The-
building inspector salaries, the assistant building inspector, the health benefits. That's never reflected on this.
This is only income.
No, I understand that,
But these are on the same basis. They're just the dollars that come in. basically.
Right.
Okay.
right. but
So what I did
yes.
was I factored the fact that we didn't have a building inspector, didn't have an assistant, didn't have any benefits. And with that, the cost to us was like $10,000.
Right, but the outside vendor is generating revenue, right?
We are generating revenue.
We just have a reduced number of applications that's coming
Right,
in.
okay,
It's December.
yes.
No one builds in December.
Yeah, that's the other reason. So January traditionally is a slow month for applications. Okay.
Okay, yes, I just was trying to extrapolate what that means, because, based upon what we budgeted. That was the reason.
Right, okay.
We have to vote on
Okay, so old business, we
it.
have,
We have to vote on it.
oh, sorry. Yes, so I motion that we approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Minus the police.
Minus the
department.
police department. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So new business, we have Valerie Bonastra. I will put your presentation up on the screen here.
We're going out of order
Yes.
now, because we have old business first, and then, so we're going out of order.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So old business, yeah, it's on here, but basically I just want to remind everyone that the last time we discussed this, the tax exemption for the firefighters and ambulance workers. There was some discussion about potential changes to the proposed amendment to the local code. We're not going to be making any changes. We're going to keep the local code as it is. So the public hearing had been set for February 23rd. 27th. Yeah, 27th. And so that's still the case with the same proposed local code that we reviewed during the last public hearing.
During the last one. So
Correct.
there was some feedback from our local fire departments as to the language was that I know that some of our local fire department leaders were supposed to reach out to. Do those conversations occur and is everyone satisfied?
So I spoke to a couple of the local fire department representatives as well as counsel for the Association of Firefighters. A couple of things that it's an opt-in law. So there's very little discretion for the board. You're going to adopt it or not. And the discretionary items are the extent of the exemption up to 10% and the minimum number of years of service, which can be between 2 and 5. The way that it's written and it's noticed for the public hearing is for 10% and it's for 2 years. If you wanted to change that, we'd have to have that done in the next few days so we can post it and publish it in time. But it applies to town tax and it applies to any special district taxes other than the fire district tax. The fire districts are separately governed, so they're going to have, like the schools, like the county, if they want to offer it on the fire district taxes, the commissions of those fire districts have to allow for the exemption.
No, I didn't think that the issue really had to do with that part of it. It had to do with how the fire departments themselves indicated who was an enrolled member. I thought that there was some issue with what definition that was and what, and that was really the big,
Enrolled active.
Yeah, I was just about to
What
say.
what
enrolled
constitutes
in
that, as well as dropping the years, we were going to the minimum 2 years, and some of the feedback that we got was
Fair
that
enough.
the 2 years was not necessarily beneficial.
Fair enough, and that's
For
entirely
retention,
within
for
your
example.
discretion.
Yeah.
To me, it's an opt-in law, and the law
Right.
says enroll. So there may be guidance that comes out. This is kind of unfair from the state legislative perspective. They passed it in December. You guys have till May 5th for your, May 1st for your taxable status date, so you have a little window here. But there's some other areas that only have till March 1st, and so it's got to really be done in a compressed time. And my guess is there's going to be guidance that comes out as to what enrolled means. I have to assume that it means active, and that's how I believe the departments are going to construe it when they certify their roles for eligible candidates or volunteers who seek the exemption, and then you'll correspond from the assessor's perspective as to whether or not those people are, or those individuals are actually applying.
But for the purpose of the local law, we don't need to get into the specifics about
I
the
don't-
enrolled
I
active
wouldn't-
status for each
yeah,
of the
I wouldn't do.
agencies. Correct, right.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Because that was really the big back and forth last time. So as long as.
I had a
we've
discussion
gotten
with
beyond
counsel for, sorry, with counsel for the firefighters association. He was in agreement that enrolled is enrolled, and it probably means active, but that's the way the law is written, and we'll probably get guidance on it as time, time passes during the course of this year.
Spoke to Tom, maybe? That council, Tom, or?
Joseph Frank.
Joe Frank, there's the
Oh.
counsel for the entire, the
Oh,
statewide.
okay.
Okay, I spoke to Tom, and with Tom, yes, him as well.
Okay.
And I think I spoke to Adam at some point also.
Yeah.
So,
And then I attended a meeting with all the agencies at the Firehouse, and they were all regarding the 2 years, because there was some question about whether or not to go with the 2 years. But they were all in agreement that they would prefer that. And we had agreed to that,
Mhm.
so,
That's fine.
trying to spur volunteerism.
right.
So, Lower
exactly.
the number, maybe the greater the
Right.
impact will be.
Okay, so that's on for February 27th. New business. Okay, Valerie, now it's your turn. Let me just get this up on the screen here.
Should I speak from here? Is that-
Yes. Need to share it on. Zoom. Where is it?
It's right there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
Open it, right, that's
It's open. So I'm gonna share it.
exactly.
Just trying to get rid of this.
Yeah, and you can carry it to the bottom if you want,
Yeah.
or that's fine.
Disappear. No, okay,
No.
all right, so let me, okay, so this is it.
All right, so yes, my name is Valerie Menastra. I'm from Nelson Hope and Voorhees. I am the principal planner and the project manager of Lewisboro Comprehensive Plan. So I'm just here tonight. Well, first of all, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee usually does quarterly reports. So in lieu of their quarterly report, I'm here to present where we are in the comprehensive plan process. So to start off with, if you can go to the next slide. All right, so this is, and I guess it's a little bit hard to read, but it will be available on your website. But basically what I just wanted to show in this graph is this is our proposed schedule. We are in the very first beginning phases of the comprehensive plan process. Basically what we have completed so far is we've had kickoff meetings, we've had site visits, we developed a community outreach plan. We've also worked on existing conditions. We have an existing conditions and analysis report that's in draft form that this board has received and the comprehensive plan steering committee has received. And we're incorporating any edits and then hoping to post that soon to the town's website. We've also conducted our first round of public workshops and some additional public online surveys for both public participation as well as a survey that supports the current round of public meetings. And then we are now going to be making our way into draft goals and draft recommendations. So all in all, this whole process should take us through the end of this year. We are anticipating staying on schedule. And then if anything needs to shift a little bit one way or the other, it will just be by a month or two, depending upon decisions that the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee makes in terms of timing of public meetings. So next slide. So okay, perfect. So in terms of deliverables, there's usually 3 different components to a comprehensive plan. The first is an existing conditions report. Basically, this is a baseline inventory of your existing conditions, and it runs the gamut of the different environmental topics that are reviewed. And it basically answers the question of where we are now. The second component deals with the actual development of the comprehensive plan itself. And it has visions, goals, and objectives and recommendations, and it sort of answers the question of where we are going. It's based on information that we received during public outreach. It's also based upon surveys and workshops. And then ultimately the draft document will get circulated amongst the community and to the town board. And it will ultimately be referred to the town board by the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. The town board will then review it. It goes out for public comment, and then we move into what we call the zoning amendment phase, where we're really looking at your drafting some zoning amendments that would help support the comprehensive plan. And then you'll do what they call state environmental quality review, which basically looks at the environmental impacts of the comprehensive plan as well as any potential zoning amendments. And then ultimately the town board adopts the plan and the zoning together. So that's the process in a nutshell, but don't worry, we'll be going through it step by step throughout the process. Next slide. Yes. Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So you're project manager,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For someone who's not a project manager at a cocktail party, how would you explain what you do and how that fits into the whole role of what we're doing?
Sure. So our job, so my job is project managing for Nelson Pope and Voorhees, but Nelson Pope and Voorhees is actually developing the documents for the comprehensive plan. So we are developing the inventory and analysis. We are also helping to conduct all the public outreach events. And then we're also going to be developing the draft comprehensive plan. And then we will be developing the draft zoning. And then we will also be working on the environmental review process, all the documents will get handed to or provided to the town board, and the town board will adopt all various components of the project.
All right, so based upon your experience,
Yes.
how are we doing so far by way of community input, by way of getting the word out, by way of community engagement, in any way that you can put in some context in your experience, how we're doing so far as this point in time in the process?
Right. So that's a great question. And I'm going to say, can you just hold 2 slides, because we're going to get right into that shortly in like 2 minutes. And I have actually data from how many people have participated so far.
Okay.
So just to touch base on the inventory analysis, as I was running through as it's one of the first components of the comprehensive plan process. So the plan topics and the inventory analysis, and this is again your baseline conditions where we are now, it looks at land use and zoning, environmental resources, transportation and mobility, community facilities, infrastructure, demographics, housing, economics. It looks at your parks and open space, historic and scenic resources, resiliency and climate change, as well as community character. So all those various elements are looked at, and then we develop the inventory and analysis document actually has individual chapters for the various environmental planning topics, and then that will carry through your comprehensive plan. So I just want to again highlight a little bit of where the town of Lewisboro is. A number of you, if you've been participating in some of our virtual meetings, you would have seen a couple of these slides. You can go to the next one over the last couple of days. But basically, the town of Lewisboro, the last time you adopted a comprehensive plan was in 1985. And so the population approximately then was around 11,313. And the town of Lewisboro's population has grown to about 12,000 people, which is an increase of about 7.76%. In comparison to the region, Westchester County has grown slightly more than the town of Lewisboro, but the town of Lewisboro has grown. You can go to the next slide. In terms of race and ethnicity, one of the things that I just want to highlight here is that while the town of Lewisboro is predominantly what they call, and these are the census categories, these are not categories that we created MPV, but white alone, which means white non-Hispanic origin. In 2010, you were 90.1%. And in 2020, you're 82.4%. One of the reasons why we wanted to highlight this is because if you see, since from 2010 to 2020, you're actually becoming more diverse. And we anticipate that trend to continue. Westchester County overall has become more diverse over the decades. While now Lewisboro is less diverse than Westchester County, it has increased its diversity through all various ethnic and racial compositions.
How does that tie into what we're trying to do?
So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how the town has changed over time in terms of the people. And there's also information in the inventory analysis where it talks about, we're going to get to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about land uses, but it'll also talk about housing. It also talks about economics. So it really shows you the kind of trends that Lewisboro is undertaking. And then you can compare it to Westchester County and just see, are you following the same trends as you do regionally? Because that also then affects, for example, like different land use patterns will also kind of give you a sense of where things potentially are going to be going. So for example, Westchester County in general is dealing with housing, right? You've probably heard many, Westchester County has probably come and even presented the housing crisis that's occurring throughout the region. So because the region itself is dealing with the housing crisis, the town of Lewisboro will also feel those kind of push-pull in terms of the market, in terms of those additional issues. So regional issues don't just stop at borders. They really do go for all communities, and all communities face them, but in different degrees. You can go to the next slide. So again, one last thing I just wanted to present tonight in terms of overall changes is land use. So you're primarily 57.4% single family residential in terms of land use. And when you even include your other residential land uses, it's still about 57.7% with acres within the town are residential land uses. That being said, you have a number of different developments in the pipeline and you will see, and once we have the report provided to you and posted on website. But basically, again, similar to what I was just saying, diversity is also increasing. So is your housing stock in terms of diversification as well. What we've noticed is that, while you're predominantly single family residential, there are a number of multifamily homes that are under consideration or being developed, which also diversifies your community as well. And then just one last thing I just wanted to highlight tonight was dealing with your water resources. I mean, this is really an important component to the town of Lewisboro. So you have your many lakes throughout the town, but you also have, because of the lakes, you also have a lot of wetlands. You also have a number of streams, your reservoirs, which means you also have floodplains. So these are different resources that, as we're looking at how does the land change or what are some zoning considerations, we'll also be taking into consideration your environmental resources and identifying ways to help preserve those, help to improve those, as well as when you go through and continue potentially developing in certain areas, what to take into consideration through the development.
So that 13% vacant land on the previous slide might include a lot of this wetlands and.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And some of the vacant land, as we've already started looking into some of the data, and we're going to add that into the narrative a little bit more. Some of it actually might have certain conservation easements that aren't necessarily identified. But yes, I mean, a lot of the vacant land would potentially have wetlands on it, so that would be something that would need to be taken into consideration for any new development. Okay, so now I'll get on to answer your question, Councilman. So public comprehensive plan, public outreach and engagement. So we really wanted to highlight, there's a number of different facets to this comprehensive plan in terms of public outreach. So first of all, you have the comprehensive plan steering committee. We have those meetings almost monthly and sometimes bi-monthly. The comprehensive plan steering committee is made up of residents in the town. So they help guide the process, especially in terms of public outreach and as well as the development of the different documents. They have been very steadfast in not guiding in the sense of developing the documents themselves, but helping to guide us as to what would be best for the town in terms of outreach, as well as getting input from the public on how getting input from the public on the development of the documents. We are also proposing to have 3 public workshops. One, we just had the first round of public workshops, and the second round will be focused on the hamlets specifically, and then there'll be a third round of another round of workshops, which would be focused on the zoning draft comprehensive plan and zoning changes. We've also undertaken outreach to town committees and boards. So I met with and communicated with all 17 of your town committees and boards to get initial feedback as to the issues or concerns within the town. So all that information will be incorporated into the comprehensive plan, especially with the goals and objectives. We've also undertaken surveys. There was the comprehensive plan steering committee really developed a public participation survey to gauge how best to develop their public outreach. And then we've also have a current survey taking place right now, which basically asks very similar questions as to the first round of public workshops. So if nobody was able to attend either the virtual or in-person meetings, they can also take the public survey, and that closes at the end of February 15th. So you have a couple more days.
Day after tomorrow.
Yes, the day after tomorrow.
And the website is?
So the website, you can get the information from the comprehensive plan website, which is www.lewisboro.gov.com. That website houses all the information, all the notices, and all documents related to the comprehensive plan. The other thing what we also did was we developed a web blast. So there's constant contact. That information is going out to about 600 people each time that there's a new outreach event taking place. So that has been very successful as well. And anybody that wants to sign up, we've been adding them to the web blast. And then the community outreach teams, this was developed by your comprehensive plan steering committee. There's about 100 different volunteers that have been helping to reach out to various areas within the town to also promote participation in the public events. And then last, we have the town has a steering committee or an email specifically associated with the comprehensive plan. And we've been identifying that as, you know, a conduit for any public feedback or any questions on the comprehensive plan. There's one point of contact. So the first round of public meetings, if you can go to the next slide. So the first round of public meetings, the first one took place on January 21st. There was 122 people that attended. And that was an in-person comprehensive plan meeting. We also held 2 virtual meetings on February 6th and 9th, and approximately 35 people attended each one of those each evening. That again, the same format, the same information was solicited from the public as well as stakeholders. And then we also have the public survey, again, is open until February 15th. And to date, we had 74 people answer. So far, you've had a total participation to date of 266 people. So the takeaways so far that we've heard, and this is just like a quick snapshot of what we're gaining from the stakeholders as well as the residents. One, the importance of the rural character within the town. There's also concern of protecting environmental resources that has been expressed in numerous events. Also need for increased mobility as well as especially sidewalks, specifically dealing with from the schools and also around the hamlet areas. Need for additional road safety, upgrades to community facilities, and developing a multi-generational community center. There's also been expressed need for increased infrastructure, especially wireless communications, broadband. Additional housing options have been identified, especially expanding accessory dwelling unit options and exploring very small scale multifamily options. Helping existing businesses and strengthening hamlet areas have also been identified. Maintaining historic and scenic resources, also better developing the community character. Creating a resilient and sustainable community, and also working towards improving the water quality of the lakes. So that's just, I mean, now this is just, there is more comments to be reviewed, but I just wanted to give the town board a little bit of a snapshot of what we're seeing so far. So the next steps, again, we're going to develop a draft vision and then develop draft goals and objectives. Once we develop those will go back out to the community during the second round of public meetings, and those public meetings will be hamlet focused. So I think the comprehensive plan steering committee asked me to, they wanted to discuss the next round of public meetings with the town board. They're recommending that the next round will have 6 in-person hamlet meetings. These would be about 2 hours in length, and 1 in-person townwide meeting. It will be one not in person, but 1 virtual townwide meeting. And then the online, or actually, I'm sorry, excuse me. I apologize. It'd be 1, I think that one is Katie online.
I saw her on.
Because I think that meant to be virtual, because I think they're planning to have 6. They want to do 6 in-person meetings, 1 virtual townwide meeting, and then online surveys, as for also additional virtual options for those who can't attend in person. But I just want to confirm that with her, and I think she's going to be on.
She is.
So the one thing that that Katie wanted to discuss tonight was that the in-person meetings for the hamlet areas were identified as doing Saturday meetings similar to the last one. The committee was suggesting having all of them run on Saturdays, which would be 7 Saturdays in the mornings. There's a trade-off. We can do that, but the problem is we would probably need to extend the time period in which those meetings take place, because we're heading right into the spring, and making sure that we have enough staff for 7 Saturdays in April, May, and June before we start running into the summertime is a little bit challenging.
Well, the other thing is there are people who work on Saturday mornings, so they would want to contribute if there were another day or evening, perhaps. Family sports as
Right.
well.
So we could,
We could mix it up and not have all of them staffed on Saturday mornings.
But they're hamlet specific.
they're hamlet specific. Right. The other option is we could potentially have like one hamlet meeting in the morning and 1 hamlet meeting in the afternoon, so that we could definitely make sure that, for finding 3 Saturdays in which we can have full staff would be easier than finding 7 Saturdays in April, May, and June.
Is it possible to do a hamlet meeting on a Sunday evening? I say this because in at least three of the hamlets, we have business districts.
Right.
And those small business owners are open for business and very busy on Saturdays.
Right.
And I think that we've all learned that they wish to actively participate. And if we continually have the meetings at the same time, and they're continually caused to leave their places of work in order to participate, it becomes a problem.
Right.
Other people raise the concerns that young families who have sport commitments, with their kids, typically Saturday mornings is not a good time. I'm not saying Sunday evening is a good time for people with children. Obviously, homework, getting them out. There's not one good time that's
Right.
good for everyone. But if we mix it up a little bit and give some options, then maybe we will encourage more people to be able to participate. And just, my observation, because I was able to attend one of the two virtual meetings, which I thought went pretty well. I had emailed both you and Katie about this. My observation of the room was
Right.
that a lot of what I was seeing was a mirror image of myself, which was people who were either empty nesters or about to be empty nesters. We're at a different point in our lives, which is helpful,
Right.
but I didn't see a lot of participation at those meetings of the young families who are going to be vested in our school district, in our parks and recreation programs, and in our outdoor spaces for the next 10 to 15 years. And so I think that we have to put some effort behind trying our best to encourage them to participate
Right.
as well.
Oh,
And some people in the virtual meetings, I know a few individuals that indicated they signed up and participated in both because they were curious to see how
Right.
one went versus the other. So
Yes, we recognize, we saw a couple people that were repeat customers.
I support what Ms. Rendo said. It's important that we have a diverse perspective, and with the greater diversity of voices, we have a richer and fuller picture.
I mean, so
Of
there
our future.
are a couple different options. So originally we were planning to do Hamlet meetings, because obviously the Hamlets are very important to the town. But most likely well, I know for a fact that the same questions are going to be asked at each of the Hamlet meetings, right? So the plan is to go into those Hamlet meetings with draft goals, right? And some town-wide draft objectives, right? So ones that we know that we're hearing from everybody that, so with that particular objective could be town-wide. Then we were going to ask people individually, okay, so within your Hamlet, what else could be done to either support, this particular goal or an additional objective that we should consider, which is like basically what could be implemented within your particular Hamlet area that could support the draft goals. And then we were also going to ask feedback on the draft goals. So if you want, another option is we could develop these meetings that you still have the ability to specifically identify what Hamlet you're referring to, but maybe we could identify different times or different days and just have it more like a number of townwide, we're calling them townwide, but we could have them in different locations within the town. But anybody from any Hamlet could come and participate, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, and not that we were gonna check, we're not gonna check what Hamlet you're coming from, but anybody who's interested in any particular Hamlet could just come and weigh in.
Well, the sessions are going to be videoed also, I assume, maybe, or not?
No, if they're in person, they probably won't be unless for some reason the town wants to.
I was just thinking that someone could watch it after the fact, and then we could provide an opportunity for them to, having seen this all, to submit some comments about the.
Right, so
Or
there will be a
perhaps-
virtual option, and that would have anybody from the town could participate. So that's what I'm saying. We would develop almost the town-wide event where anybody from any Hamlet can participate, and we would still have the same questions, and people could still specifically say, in Walkabook or Cross River, we have this concern and we want to note that. So we could do that and just develop, specifically a number of different town meetings to allow for more participation, and then just develop it so that people could still respond specifically to their Hamlet area, but it wouldn't necessarily be the Golden's Bridge meeting or the Vista meeting. So that's another option to consider.
I'm gonna circle back to my question. Before,
Sure.
Because I didn't get really, I got a lot of raw data here, but I'm not getting any with all due respect, I'm not getting any context for you as to how we're doing in this process. What I saw based upon the raw data is we have about 2% of the people who have
Yes.
participated in any way, shape, or form thus far. I don't know if that's good, bad, et cetera, as to where we are. One of the things, like you heard from Andrew, which is terribly important, is that we should get, you mentioned about the community becoming more diverse.
Right.
Correct. A lot of people who have moved to the community during COVID in the last 2 or 3 years. So my pointed question to you is, what are you doing to ensure as part of the process, we're going to hear from those people as part of this, or where we're going on this. And so we get a full flavor of the community and what they're looking for, as opposed to a narrow perspective of those 260 some odd people, which may be the same people, which are part of the backbone of this community. There's a relatively small amount of people in this community do a tremendous disproportionate amount to make this community run. So I'm just want to know what your goal is and how you're going to, your mechanism is to reach out to those people. So we have a really good process going on.
Right. So that's a good question. We have been, like I said before, we have been doing web blasts. We have been posting on any sort of social media. We have had information both translated in both Chinese as well as Spanish. We've also had interpreters at both of those meetings in case anybody needed that. We also have very specifically, if anybody has any additional requests so that they could participate, that they could contact the town. You have the outreach committees, which were specifically Hamlet focused, as well as different I believe focused on some businesses. So those have been established by the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. So we've been basically trying to check as many boxes as possible in terms of communication and outreach. If the town board has any other ideas in which, how to generate more participation, we'd love to hear it.
I think you should maybe, for example, go to the tax office, find out who's come into town in the last 3 years and do some kind of targeted communication to the people who are new to the community in the last 3 years. That may be one way. That'll be several hundred people that, first of all, you're bringing them into the community. Welcome to the community.
Right.
We have a process that's going on. As Andrew is saying, young families that are going to be here, hopefully for the next, 15, 20 years.
It's a mix of people that's started to move into our
Yeah.
town, and some of them are already empty nesters, but
Absolutely
we
right.
want to get everybody's voice, and we want a diverse. We
Right.
want everybody's input.
100%.
I know that at the workshop there, I spoke to a few people who were new in town. There was some new residents that.
Right, and we also had
received the communication,
childcare
so-
available at the in-person workshop too, if anybody needed that as well. So the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee is really, coming up with lots of different ideas to have as many people participate as possible. But, if you want me to contact the assessor and ask her to, provide the addresses, and we can work with the town to identify how to contact, whether it's a mailing or something, I'm sure the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee would be happy to do that as well.
Like we also have a new resident forum coming up, I think later this month.
The end of February.
Yeah, there should be, it should be somebody there to reach out to the new residents in the community. for
Sure, I
example.
can talk to
So
the
that
committee
they're,
about that as well.
welcome to the community. It's a good
The
opportunity to get
27th, I
involved.
think.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
And also we have 2 board members that are liaisons to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. So ideally, with this new event.
I
or
have
this new
been
residents event.
texting that survey to people to
Yeah.
encourage them to
Yeah.
take it, trying to make it as easy as possible. That is something else maybe we can do. But how you get those text messages or the flash we have? No, we just have.
Well,
It's Notify Lewisboro in
Yeah.
partnership with the New York Alert warns you of critical information in emergencies, providing timely information.
we could
to
use that.
prevent
We could
lives.
activate that platform for this purpose. That's. Yeah,
So
that's
I
doable.
find it easy, when I send someone
you
the
do
link
decide.
on their phone and they're sitting
I was
there, they
going to
do it
mention
right
it.
then and there.
Right.
We're even tying into, let's say,
During public-
Parks and Recreation. We
public- I was
also
gonna
going
mention
into people who are going to register for camps. You link into other things where people get involved in the community, other points of contact.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's hundreds of people who are going to be involved with the camp and Parks and Rec programs. There's another opportunity there as well. Because I don't know how 2% is, but hopefully we could do a lot better.
Yes, absolutely.
How does that compare with other?
With other communities, I mean,
communities, yeah.
again, everything is, depending on the community and how, but I would say you're actually doing very well. Because having 266 people participate, I've worked in other communities where you get like 40 people participating, so. I was just at a public hearing not too long ago and there was like 5 people in the room.
Right,
So,
okay.
Does the board want to consider a mailing to try and drive attendance at the Hamlet meetings? mean,
We could, I mean, one of the points I was gonna make with the scheduling for these next sessions is, of course, we have to keep the budget in mind, right?
Right.
And I know there's been some exchanges over email about that.
But
So, right,
we
yeah.
we have within the budget basically 7 meetings.
Mhm.
So, however the board wants to conduct those next round of 7 meetings, they could be Hamlet focused, but if you want to have, again, different days, different times, some more virtual, some more in person, we could come up with other, ideas, but those would probably end up having to be more I'm gonna call them townwide and not necessarily specifically Hamlet-wide, although we could have them in different areas of the town.
That
So
would
that's
be-
not
that
an
would
issue
be-
at all.
That would be a good idea.
but I would ask everybody to consider seriously a mailing. I mean, given the gravity of what we're trying to achieve here, and it's first time in 40 years
Too long.
to spend a few $1,000s on a townwide mailing, which lists all of the Hamlet events and say, this is your chance. Please come. Have your voice heard.
Mhm.
Or a recommendation, the
Worthwhile.
most cost effective and efficient way nowadays, for example. And I know there's mailings, is it responsive rate, whatever the term is, response
Rate.
rate.
Response rate.
So, and the question is, we're trying to break out into people that we're not gonna.
Right.
And
Okay.
Technology should give us those opportunities.
Yeah, and I know I believe things have been notices have been going out on the web blast from the town, the recreation department as well. So, we've been trying to find every avenue possible in terms of communication, but we can consider doing the mailings as
I
well.
think the people you're gonna hit with the emails are already by definition kind of engaged at some level. And as Mary was saying, we're trying to reach into those corners where maybe there's a little less engagement.
Like even if we could tack on, say, a school mailing, right?
I don't know.
If the board is put something, drop a paragraph in there or something about.
The school board is not exactly
User friendly.
welcoming to those of us who are no longer engaged with the school system.
And then you're mixing it with a bunch of other stuff, you want to smack people over the head. It's got the hammer that comes out.
Well,
of the
we
envelope.
would prefer to draw them in with the hopes that they would become civically engaged rather than focusing on violent language. We want them involved and we want everyone to make a difference.
So I guess the takeaway is I know there was a discussion about how we're gonna move
Right.
forward. Sounds like we may be deviating from that.
Right, so why don't I come back with
I-
some options,
yeah.
or I can
And I would
certainly
recommend
respond.
that both Andrew and Dan, since you're both liaisons, that you work on this with.
I was gonna ask, when is our next
Katie?
meeting again?
I think at February 23rd, we
That's
moved
fine.
it so that both you and Dan can come to the meeting,
Yes, thank you, that's what I thought.
so we can talk
I
about
mean,
it.
the goal, of course, is we want to stay within the budget, but, if you want to do an extra mailing or a mailing, that's going to obviously add to the budget.
So,
Okay,
All right.
all right, well, thank
Valerie.
you, thank you for
you.
letting me, come tonight.
You're welcome. Okay, so next we have borrowing resolution. So I had sent an email out to the board, several emails regarding the potential borrowing after meeting with each of the department heads and getting feedback. Basically, we have 2 departments that are requesting funds for some capital improvements. That includes highway and parks and rec. And with the timing that we are faced with in terms of our current bond anticipation notes and the fact that they're going to need to be reissued by a certain date, we decided to put this on the agenda for tonight. And basically, there are 2 resolutions. One was for, and again, this doesn't mean that we need to borrow the full amount, but the amounts that were presented to us based on requests from highway were, let's see here, 614,000 for highway and 367,000 for parks and rec. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to decide if we want to go through with both of those borrowing resolutions or just one. And what would be the amount that we would actually borrow, what from these projects we would, and maybe I can share the screen so folks can see it. And Peter Rippinger from Highway is here, as is Nicole from Parks and Rec. So, you know, maybe we can start with, let's put this up here. We can start with Peter. Let's put this, okay. What happened here?
I don't know, we watched TV.
TV just came on, Sean. Not the Rangers. This commercial break is.
No, we would, Sean, we would like to
Is that
just
the same with you?
end this meeting as quickly as possible.
You can at least put Super Bowl highlights.
That game is done.
This is not. This is. Sharing. Okay. So basically, this is the spreadsheet I had put together. Maybe Peter, you can come up. We'll start with your discussion. So in talking to Peter, his requests are for 2 additional Harvest International, right? Correct. And these are plow and salt trucks, as well as a hot box for pothole repair. What a hot box allows you to do is to work with heated blacktop, which makes the repair last much longer than how you're doing it today.
The request this year is the same as I asked for last year. We requested to get 2 trucks replaced. The vintage of these trucks is one now is 21 years old and one is 18 years old. Fortunately, we've had a little bit of a mild winter, but these trucks are past their life expectancy and causing a lot in expenses right now. We're looking, as we did last year, to redo them.
And you normally would auction off these.
Well, here's what'll
to
happen,
get the
and I
dollars
explained to Tony. We'll take the best out of them and turn it into our rock truck or a log truck, because we don't like to beat up anything that's new. So we'll take the old one until she dies, and if it doesn't die, we'll take it off to Auctions International, where you get 4 or 5, maybe 10 grand for it, okay? But the best thing is with these new trucks, last year, 3 years ago, we got 2 new ones. They're all CompuServe. What I mean is CompuServe, everything is computed for their salt and everything. The 2 new trucks that we got use 35% less salt. No human error involved in this. You set the computer, I lock it, put it for its pound per lane mile, and it dispenses that. Whereas the old trucks, you drive along, no matter what speed you're going, you can turn it up and nail it. The new trucks, whatever that speed that truck's going, is going to go. And whenever I got it set, that's going to go. Plus, down the road, the sophistication of this will also give us how much salt is dropped by that truck. Okay, the speed of that truck. Okay, these are all things that you want to have. Plus, you know, bottom line is if you can save 30% of your salt down the road, you're doing well. Plus, they are stainless steel bodies. They're not going to rot out. We could transpose that to a new frame. As we're doing right now, we got 1 truck in the garage that we're trying to refurbish, put a new body on. So we're just trying to think ahead of the curve here, because we got ourselves, when I first started here, as you know, we had quite a bit of stuff that had to be replaced. And right now, you're starting to slide. I don't want to see that. You know, I mean, I will be leaving here soon, and I would like the new guy to have what he's got coming to him too, you know. And I enjoy working here and I want to keep the equipment light. So that's why I'm hitting you with this. And they're 1.5 years out. We ordered the trucks in April. If luck, we'll have them in a year. Because manufacturing is just at a standstill. You can't get parts. And right now we're still having trouble with parts. And one of the trouble with some of the older trucks that we have, they were known as a Sterling. Okay, Sterling was bought out by Chrysler. Chrysler killed it. They put it out of business for their Western Star. So it's getting harder to get parts. You can get generic parts, but you can't get body parts that rot out on it. So we're coming to you with that in preparation. Let's get the 2, at least get them ordered. You're 1.5 years down the road. And by then, you know, you may need something else. The other piece of equipment that we're looking for is what is known as the hot box. New York City uses them. A lot of the towns are using them. When we go around and do potholes, you know what happens? It comes in, it goes out, it pops out. because of the caliper of what you're using is a cold patch. With the hot box, we can take regular asphalt, leave it in the box, use what you do for the day, plug it in and leave it at night, and finish it in the morning. It's all coming out hot out of the box, what it's set at. So when that sets up, it sets. It's not gonna pop out of that pothole 2 days down the road. So for your benefit, and it is saving you because you load up the box, you're not running the truck down to get product all the time. You keep it here, put it in the garage, you got a problem, you go out and you use it.
But you're still locked into the regular asphalt plants,
It's a regular asphalt plant. You'll go down, you fill that up, bring it in, especially in the wintertime. You get these potholes, as we all know what they're like. We have to run up to, Pauline and get what's called a polyester mix. This would be great because we could get it from the thing. Even in the summertime, we can bank some in the dome and then square it off, put it in the box, melt it and bring it out. So it really, it's a piece of equipment you really want to have if you can, because now when you make a hole, when you make a patch, it'll stay. It's just not going to leave you high and dry, So those are the reasons, those are the things. They're all under contract. The trucks are on a doctor contract, which we piggyback on. And the hot box is under PLJ's contract. There's 2 contracts under that. So they're all state bid out. If not, they're bid out by 3 different corporations. And the box is only made by maybe 2 people, 2 companies.
So I'm a little confused. So
Can I ask a couple questions? What? Peter, when were you first asked to put this list together for tonight?
Well, originally this list was put together for my budget.
No, I know that. I'm asking, when were you asked to put this list together for this meeting?
Last week, Friday,
Well,
Thursday.
he was
But,
actually, yeah, just to clarify, you had invited me over to meet with you to talk about this, right?
With what, Tony?
You had invited me to meet with you to talk
Yes, I
about
asked
this
Tony,
request.
Tony
He asked
called
me
and I
to-
said, if this is coming forth, you should come over and see what we're talking about.
Okay.
Come over, view the truck, see
Yeah.
what it is. But this is the same as we had last year, but it's been a long time coming, but the presentation to Tony or the request of was only recent.
Okay.
It's always been into the budget.
No, I know. I remember the trucks from
Yeah, I
from the
remember.
budget time.
Yeah.
So is there anything, I see, I mean, we're down to 2 items. Was there anything that was on your longer list that obviously these are priority. one
It's a
and two.
priority, yeah.
Were there other things like, I don't see any borrowing for roads. I don't know if that would.
Well, we had asked for, as you know, we had asked for more money to pave roads on our budget. That was turned down at that time. So that's our key thing is paving.
Right.
We don't have the money to pave, we can't pave the roads. We will have down the road coming up, we've always had, will be our sweeper. Our sweeper's getting very old, but
Was that on your longer list?
2 years ago it was kicked off.
No, I'm just
No,
asking.
it was
what-
not on that.
There's 2 things on this list. I'm just asking, was
Three
it a
things
longer
on
list that you've cut
That's the
back?
list I presented. What you see is what was.
The 2,
presented,
the
period.
hot box and the 2 trucks.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a.
Rich, you had a question?
Yeah, so this, all I see for 2 trucks of a certain type and a number. So I don't know if you may have just touched on this. Are there other companies that make similar things?
There's other companies make a lot of, meaning trucks.
Meaning what we're talking about?
Yeah,
I'm
well,
seeing
meaning what you're talking-
one line with 2 trucks for $558,000.
Right.
What I'm not seeing an invoice as to, or a sticker if I was buying a car. I'm not seeing what comparable one.
Because
could
this will
be.
come up, you will get, what you get from this, as I have in the past, you get a copy of the owner docker contract. That states it all from the dealership. Those prices are dealt with by the state. They put those together for us and something we piggyback the contract. Contract isn't here yet because those haven't gone out. They won't go out till April when you do the bond.
And these prices may change. and
Oh, they
will.
have already
This is not
fluctuated a little
exact.
bit depending on the cost of metal and that, but we only buy,
I've heard
we try
that. I've
always
heard
buy
that.
up a state contract.
Mhm.
Because that eliminates having to go out to bid. They've already done the work for it, and this is what's working for other towns. Most every town is doing that, or Western Stars are hard to get and Max are too expensive. So this is basically what the normal municipality truck is.
Is there a possible way to pool resources with other communities? I presume Pound Ridge and Somers and other places need similar things. Do we
They
have
do
any
the-
buying power, say if 10 municipalities got together, we wanted to buy 10 trucks. And everybody gets a 25% discount on the trucks that we buy.
Still be the state contract. They all go under the state contract. Most of them all buy under the state contract. For the simple reason is you can't buy better than what the state can under the quantity that the state is buying. I mean, Pound Ridge does the same thing. North Salem does the same thing.
So in essence, this contract does what Rich is saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Basically,
pretty well laid out.
yeah.
And right now, competition isn't there anymore. There's very little competition. You got a Western Star, you've got a Mack, which is the Cadillac of it,
Mhm.
you know, but for municipality use, when they took away the Ford, you were stuck with the corn binder, the International. And that's what you got, basically. And buying power, it's the same, all your parts and everything. If you're buying the same trucks, we borrow from, if we need something, we'll go over to Pound Ridge, you get the same truck. Get a part from them if we can,
Mhm.
and then we'll pay it back. And that's what we try to do. But the biggest dealership for International is in Newburgh. So we have to, if the trucks have to be, you know, go in for warranty, they end up going all the way up to Newburgh.
And it doesn't make sense to share a truck with Pound Ridge because we need it at
When
the
they need it,
same
we need
time.
it. And that, and they're in the same situation too. You know, everybody's limited to what they have. We in town of Lewisboro, compared to North Salem and compared to Pound Ridge, have more roads. We got 96 miles of road. You know, you're looking at one town's got 60 and one that's got 58
Yeah.
miles of dirt, plus 12 miles of dirt road. So our trucks get pounded a lot more because, excuse me, Pound Ridge doesn't have dirt roads. And that's what we'll really need. We tried to do something this year. We bought a little 550 with a Salter on it for the lake community. Because we've, and that's working out nice. If that continues to work out nice, the next person will be approaching you, may be able to downsize to that for lake areas if it works out.
Mm.
Mother Nature has cooperated in other ways this year. So we'll have to see.
This is labeled in Tony's email as a plow and salt truck.
Yeah,
So-
they're plowing salt trucks.
So do they have any, do they have any use for the non-snow?
Oh,
season?
yeah, I mean, when they're labeled that way, they're basically saying is they're two-season bottoms. They're universal. Once they come out of the winter mode, take the bottom, we flip them off from salt to dirt, and they continue on their way. Take off the spreaders and down the road they go. They're universal. They can be used for blacktop, salting, whatever. There's no one truck that does one thing beside a scraper. Because we have to. We have to be able to swing it up, go into salt, take it up and go to dirt roads. So the trucks are universal around here. They're not like if you go over to possibly over to Ridgefield where they don't deal with dirt roads much and all that. They stay in that mode a lot. You have to be able to swing all ways with this. And that's what eats the trucks up too, because they're always doing a different type of work. We're pulling rock and we're pulling, you know, a lot of trees, but we, like I say, we're keeping older trucks for that so we don't bang up the new trucks.
And I was gonna say, I know the logging, or the log truck that you're using
saw
today,
that.
you would look to sell that.
Well, yeah, the bottom line is we need it, right now, we don't have a spare.
Mhm.
So it would be nice to have a spare. So out of the two that come down, one will go out, yeah, it's gonna be gone. I mean, we just fabricated one to use for the log truck right now, but when these come, and like I say, it's gonna be year and a half down the road, who knows what condition they'll be certainly.
But the point I was gonna make is if you're gonna sell the log truck for only $10,000, it may be worth keeping it
Oh, well, like I say, Tony,
and use it because it's already, it's been adapted for logs, you know, the plates that were.
we usually, you're 100% correct. We either usually bury it,
Mhm.
okay? Or one that we had that was fairly decent, we got a good buck for it, fine. The smaller trucks, usually one or two of those, we downsize and they go to maintenance.
Right.
For those of us who don't understand what you just said.
I'm sorry.
When you say, I'm sorry, when you say buried,
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
you know,
I'll take up its whole usefulness of life,
okay, thank you.
okay?
Just,
And then we go out to, we have auctions international and every bit of older equipment we don't use, we put on auctions international. Last year, I think we raised $50,000-$60,000. So you don't lose. I mean, if we don't use it, we sell it.
thank you.
So in my opinion, this is, and I haven't discussed this with Peter yet. I did mention this to the board. I think we don't need the two trucks. So my proposal would be to go with one, keep that log truck for as long as we can.
I would disagree with you, but that's okay.
Okay.
I have to
Okay.
disagree with you the way
Yeah.
the condition of some of those trucks are. That's your choice to make.
Yeah.
I represent and I'm gonna have to, the people of the town, and that's the equipment they have. You choose one, we have to live with one.
Right.
Last year, the board choose none. We live with one, but it's getting hard.
Let me ask you this, you have the one truck that's not operational now because it needs a new dump body.
We got two of them actually. One's got engine problem and one's got a body problem.
Right.
but we've had a good winter.
I think the young man in the back wanted to chime in here, I believe.
Which,
Yeah.
oh, does he? Okay,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, I didn't see
Leo.
Leo. Yeah, Leo, if you want to come up and. Sure. And Leo's our former controller, currently a financial consultant, and I think our new controller, she was here.
You should stay
Oh, there
here.
she is. Yeah, there she is. Hi, Nisha.
Had said delivery is one and a half years from now.
One, and it could go to 1.5, depending on when we get the order. If the order goes in April, expeditiously, possibly a year. If it laggers in one more month, all the orders they try to get out as early as possible in April. It could go anywhere from a year to a year and a half, very possible.
So when do you actually need the money?
Oh, I wouldn't need them. Oh, that's a tricky one. That's a good one. I like that. Usually I get that at home. You wouldn't have to pay, right. Yes. You pay on delivery.
So is it a possibility? You wouldn't be able to order the truck until you had a commitment from the board that you had the money to do so.
Or commitment that you will have and deliver. Yes,
So a resolution is that commitment from the
Yes.
board,
that's correct.
but we wouldn't have to borrow till you actually needed to pay for the truck.
Absolutely.
That's, I guess, one thing to consider, that if you really feel delivery is a year after now, that the town can commit, borrow, but not borrow until a year and a half from now. This is all.
And Leo, what you're thinking is that we wouldn't have to pass this bond resolution tonight.
No, I'm thinking even tonight, if he wants to order the truck in April or by April,
Mhm.
you would need to authorize a resolution to allow him to do so. Whether or not you approve it tonight or 2 weeks from now, or in April. If your thought is not to use the funds, not to borrow the funds in this upcoming ban, then you're not restricted to when you approve the resolution.
So if
So you-
this thing
Right,
is
so-
delivered like next year or the year after, with the resolution here, we're committing the next version of the board to coming up with the money, paying for it.
You'd be committing to borrow the money when he needs it. And.
And that would have to be,
As such,
would that be like reflected somewhere on our liabilities in some way so that it's gonna capture,
Yes,
you know?
well, not on the balance sheet, per se, but it'll be disclosed in the marketing circular for this ban. If indeed you approve the resolution prior to this ban being reissued. If you don't approve the resolution, or if you approve the resolution subsequent to this ban being reissued, then there's no disclosure.
I'm just concerned of it sort of disappearing into the background of things and like, you know, no, there's this
I don't think we
commitment.
will let you have it disappear.
So basically, it's
Because
a resolution giving him permission to place the order, which then thereby commits us to borrow the funds.
well, the resolution would be borrowed.
Okay,
So we still have to go through the resolution that we were provided from bond counsel.
Right.
Okay,
But use that. And that would give him the ability to order the truck.
Or trucks.
You were just touching on something, Leo, which I think was in the email you forwarded, is the last part. So we also don't know the borrowing rate right now. We have no idea what that would be.
We do not.
And you'd be borrowing in the future anyway.
Less than a week ago or 2 weeks. But the pricing date is the end of March. We're talking, 5 or 6 weeks.
right, but if we vote to pass this resolution on the ban to borrow the funds, right? Are we then locked into whatever rate comes up or the rate, or then, sorry, or do we get the rate at the time that we're ready to borrow? That should be a good thing or a bad thing. Okay.
If you pass this resolution, will authorizing Peter to make the order. You're not borrowing the money yet, you're just allowing him to order it. And then when the time comes, hopefully it would be timed so that come April of 24, you can incorporate that additional money in the band that will be repricing April of 24. But it's conceivable that it won't be timed that well, and you may have to borrow the money independently of the band being reissued.
If the trucks come in earlier than anticipated.
Which would be at the rate, the market rate that we would get on April 13th. I mean, March, when you go to market, what was the date?
The only
Because the rate is
only
fixed.
the only borrowing that is relevant for the rate on March 29th is what you're borrowing in April, when you reissue this ban on April 12th of 2023.
Right.
If his borrowing hasn't taken place yet, like if you're not incorporating that amount in this ban reissue, then you don't have to, right?
Mhm.
You know that you can authorize a resolution for $500,000, but you don't have to borrow $500,000.
Right.
You can borrow nothing. So that's not part of the borrowing.
It's borrowing authority up to X. Can you just go back a little, Leo, and give me a ban, remedial 2-minute courses? Like, why do we have to, like, the ban, how does that apply here? Why we have to borrow within a certain window, and why does that come up in this context?
You don't have to borrow in a certain way.
Okay.
It's for convenience, practicality, or reducing costs. We have a ban that's outstanding already for about $3.3 million. It's coming to its maturity on April 13th,
Which is in your email, you said, okay.
right?
Yep.
So you can do one of two things, one of three things. You can either pay off the 3.3 million, which you can, or you can reissue the ban for another year. It has to be done regardless.
Mhm.
So whether or not you tack on additional dollars or not, you still have to reissue the existing ban. It has to be reissued, or the investor wants to get paid, right? So that's the timing. That's why it's being presented to you now.
So essentially, we have principal on a loan that's coming due, and we can extend it so we can use the opportunity to borrow additional money with that, since we're
Right.
stretching out the payments, in other words.
The reason why resolutions are being presented to you now is because there is a time frame in order to incorporate these new borrowings into the reissues, right? So, and we've done that. When I started, there were several bans with different maturity dates. Each time you reissue a ban, it has its own costs associated with it. It's got its own issue costs. So over time, we accumulated all the bans to mature on the same date. So the issuing costs were reduced, because you didn't have multiple issuing dates, right? So that's why the resolution is being presented to you tonight. If we want to include those new borrowings in the existing ban that needs to be reissued, there's a time frame to do it. It's roughly 50 days prior to the issuance date. And that's kind of where we are now. You need 30 days for a permissive referendum period and an additional 20 days for an estoppel period. And so that's why it's being presented to you now. But you need not authorize it if you don't care if it's included in this ban. You could authorize it at a later date if you really want to think about it, and issue a separate ban on its own.
But then there'd be more money involved in paying for it.
Well, there's legal costs, there's.
Right. What we're doing is we're saving the town money by grouping the transactions together.
Okay.
So that's why it's being presented to you now, because the existing ban is coming up for reissue.
And if you were rolling into long-term today, like, or is that not competitive with the ban rates?
To be honest, I have not looked at long-term rates for a couple of reasons. Well, one, I'm really kind of less engaged than it once was. But in order to do that, you need to get a rating from Standard and Poor's. They have to re-rate you. And that's an additional $20,000 additional cost. It's also an additional amount of work to get the documentation in place to do so. And right now, the existing team is,
Sure,
forgive me, is not well versed
sure.
in what needs to be done. So I would think that a ban is an easier concept.
And the rates are probably not gonna be better than this anyway, so.
So,
They're not ideal, but they're not the worst.
so going this route was saving the transaction costs associated with the new ban, as well as the legwork associated with doing all that as well.
Got it.
Is municipal lease still bad, team?
Sorry?
Is municipal leasing still bad? No music?
I think so.
Okay.
I think their rates have become more competitive too.
I don't know if everybody's familiar, we used to do a municipal lease, okay? And we lease a truck for 7 years, okay? You pay the truck in 7 years, and for $1, it's yours at the end. Don't get excited, you're paying for all of it in 7 years, one way or another, but it was a municipal lease. And at one time, we did it readily. As soon as the lease finished out, we got another one, because the money was in the budget. Okay, every year you did that. So it just rolled. We would have 2 trucks come off lease, roll the next, and you kept those trucks and you rolled them out. But what happened was, and I'm sure Leo will tell you, the interest rate, the lease rate just jumped. Okay. That was the way we were buying before when we had it on our thing. So I never had to come to you and say, this is what I want.
And you mentioned this in prior
Yeah,
presentations.
and
so we
it
don't-
worked. but
We don't know where the lease
prices
rate,
went crazy.
so we
I
don't know
don't-
where the lease rate is now.
Well, I haven't even looked into it for the simple reason it's something we weren't doing anymore. But it was feasible at that time, because then you could order the 2 trucks for your cost of your payment. If you're paying 14,000 a year or whatever the cost was at that time for 7, 5, 6, 7, or 8 years.
So Leo, could we make the proposal and then not borrow the money if he finds that it's less expensive to do it through the lease?
Correct, you can do that. By approving a resolution to borrow does not mandate you to borrow.
Okay,
You can only borrow up to the amount the resolution allows you to, which means 0 up to whatever that amount is.
Got it.
up to 4 point.
We're essentially pre-qualifying the purchase. What do we
And,
go forward
and
on?
how long is this authorization last? Not forever, I assume. Must be.
I'm unaware of a majority. I'm unaware of it. That doesn't mean I'm aware of it.
In other words, like,
An expiration date.
the highway department wouldn't sit there and leave it there for 10 years and come back and say, oh, I got this approval to borrow. That's
As far as I know, that could be a possibility unless the board deletes the resolution, negates the resolution.
okay.
Rescinds the resolution.
Here's my last question. In looking at the letters, I see that it's kind of grouped as acquisition of trucks and equipment for road plowing and maintenance, and the other reads improvements to various parks and recreational areas. So although, we're looking at a list of items with an estimate of the cost for those potential items, we're not bound to use it for those specific items as long as whatever comes up during our ban period falls within those categories, right? So we don't have to buy a filter for the pool If we decide we don't want to, we can buy something else for the pool.
How's the resolution worded?
Um,
I think it's worded broadly enough.
that was.
Right here.
Well, this is the
This is improvements to various parks and
This is-
recreational areas.
resolution worded.
So
Greg, is that what it is? That's what I'm talking about?
I think that's broad wording.
Yeah.
Okay,
Am
I
I
got
reading
it.
the right thing? Then? Various parks and recreational areas, so.
That's the broad wording that's in the letter, which is then reflected in the resolutions.
In A.
Improvements to various parks and recreation areas. Yeah.
yep,
Okay,
I got it.
So, Peter, we had talked about the dump box for that other truck. So potentially that, and I discussed this with Leo, that could be part of this resolution as well.
Could it be? I didn't know if it could be. Okay,
Yeah, so because of the way it's worded.
okay.
But if you add it, if you still want the two trucks and the salt and the hot box, we're gonna exceed the amount.
Oh, yes, of the dump box.
They exceed the amount of the resolution as
Yep.
it's currently drafted.
Okay,
Or we could do one truck.
Or we could do
A
one
box
truck, that's
and
what
a
I was gonna
box.
get to. Do one truck, a dump body. He's.
you go, but anyway, what you guys want to spend it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm just
Okay.
telling you what you need.
Okay,
Okay, that's all. And the hot box, if we're going to hold off with the trucks, that's something you want to get and not hold off for a year and a
Right.
half if they're available. They're about 4 months out.
You know, given the,
Just let me know which way you want to do. If you want to deal with the lease, you want to do, let me know.
given the, you know, improvements that it'll make in terms of the consumption of
The salt,
salts, which has environmental impacts. We're facing.
We were always trying to update those salters.
Right.
And they finally came out with this digital one that's been, a proven factor. And it's a good one.
and
So it's
given-
working good on the
given
two trucks.
Delivery and how,
thank you, Leo.
thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Leo.
given the long delivery
Such a good-
time. You know, given that this undoubtedly is also has, you know, safety improvement implications to it.
Yeah,
I'd
I
be in
think we should go
favor
with
of-
the two trucks.
Of getting the two trucks.
I support that idea as well.
Moving back to the hot box.
Go for it.
So do we have sufficient staffing if we acquired that?
Oh, yeah.
That we'd be able to make, you know, maximum use and have a measurable
Right.
benefit on how we deal with the potholes.
Well, to answer that question, okay. Right now, we do, it takes 3 guys. You got to shovel it up the back of the truck, put it down the camper. This pours out and we roll it. Same amount of people, same amount of situation. We'll get more use out of it. You know, because when it's cold, I can say in the wintertime, instead of just, you know, go out and do 1 or 2, go out and do it until you run out of product. You know, that's a good thing about that. Summertime, springtime or what, you can do it, you know. It's really, if you've seen them on TV, you've seen the state use it or what they use it, right? That's the best way to do them. If you don't want to keep popping them out. Because you can't help it. They're going to come out in the middle of the winter time when you're using a cold product.
So what's the life expectancy of a hot box repair supposed to be?
What's the reason,
No,
especially?
no, the life,
No.
like how long?
Oh,
how
it's a
long-
box.
you
It's a
mentioned
box
the
with a
thing-
burner.
You mentioned the things popping out, like
No, no.
in a short time.
No,
That's the road.
Right, by contrast,
the hot box should be here for, really, the only thing the hot box has got is a burner and a tank, you know.
No, his
No, but-
question was, how long does the repair last in the road?
Oh,
Like, how
it should
good
last
is it?
as relatively as close as the hot, when you put down hot concrete. So you're looking at, instead of, a week or 2 weeks, you should be able to shoot 1, 2 months, 3 months, right, through the week, through the season. You should be able to. Much more than what you're getting, and you can't get product a lot in the winter time. You got to use the cold product. That you're putting in there. It's only going to help you. And you can put out strips, you can pick out wider places instead of just a hole. Brings you into the 21st century. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
Blessed idea.
Thank you.
I mean, my opinion, I don't like borrowing. Try to shy away from borrowing more than we need. But I think the combination of the truck, the dump body and the hot box would probably be a good way to start. And
Well,
I think there's still some life left in these 2 trucks that we can that we can take advantage of.
Why don't we hear from Nicole, because we're still going into the same borrowing,
Well, it's a separate resolution, but
it is,
We
but if the
could.
total amount was still the total bill, is the total bill.
One thing about it.
yeah, that's,
Well, Greg has to say something.
yeah, go ahead, Greg.
So with the equipment, it's different than if you're gonna go ahead and purchase them. You have them on the sacred list. Right, so if the authorization for that wouldn't be until after.
Correct, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna authorize any amount tonight.
So tonight we would just be authorizing the amount, not specifically what we're gonna spend it on.
Right, and then there'd be a separate authorization. to
Right.
Purchase them from.
Yeah.
From
Okay.
Free Truck or wherever they get them.
Yeah.
wherever the vendor is
Okay,
At a different time, but Park and Rec capital projects, it's all competitive bidding to. Which they're doing.
right,
That's not gonna be state level stuff.
right. Yep. All right, so let's hear from Nicole. I mean, so Nicole and I met, we discussed, these are the high priority projects that are on her list, which totals 367,000. And so the draft resolution that we received from bond council is for that amount. So any questions for Nicole, or we have the list, right? That's the list that's on the
Is there
spreadsheet.
anything not on here that you wish was on here? How about that?
Well, okay, we're gonna go back to the bathhouse and the pickleball courts, because that's what I was here for 2 weeks ago. Friday, I met with Joe Tremelli and he brought an architect. And it was just the three of us at the pool looking at the bathhouse and the guardhouse. And there are options, as we know, that we can renovate or we can knock down and build anew. Personally, and from some of the feedback that I got, we are looking at building new. There's no point of putting so much money into the building itself when the exterior structure is not sound to do so, to hold that. And then looking at the guardhouse and then the concession stand, and putting everything into one building really is another third option. Just to have all of the mechanical in one place. And then that really expands, as I had mentioned to Tony a week and a half ago, that always, past discussions, was always putting a wading pool back in. So we used to have a wading pool, and then we put in a play structure, and then the zero depth entry of the pool became the new wading pool for infants and toddlers. Parents with young children really like that. So that is something that could be down the road. If we get rid of the current guardhouse, that would be an ideal location for that. So we're really looking to put everything, like I said, in one facility, one building, guardhouse out front so that they could see out to the pool. And then you've got your women's, you've got family restrooms, and then men's, and then concession on the other end that would face the patio. So now with having the town engineer and an architect on board, we will eventually see numbers and plans, and then we have to pay for those plans. So there is going to be a fee associated with that. We need to accept that in order to move forward. Ideally, this would be a 2024 project that could be done before the 2024 pool season. And that's what the architect told me.
All right, so we're not looking at band funds for that. That's a whole animal unto itself,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
So other than the pool house and the pickleball courts, which we have on different tracks, this is a pretty decent list of a wish list of the things that you feel that we should be looking to borrow for.
Correct. Okay. So this is partial of my list that I had submitted with the budget of capital projects. And then Tony and I met about a week and a half ago, and that's where we really looked at this list and felt, what is actually achievable, and broke it down. So the pool valves, the strainer, the chlorine storage tank, the dive pool pump are already things that are in works, and that is an estimated price tag of $55,000. The dive pump was close to completely dying out last summer, and we pulled along. But now that is being rebuilt down in White Plains. So that's already under construction. We have 2 pool valves that are in the surge tank that need to be replaced. Brought in a company today to take a look, and hopefully they can order that and get that done before the pool opens. Chlorine storage tank, that's 1,000 gallon tank that holds the main chlorine that feeds into the pump rooms and then into the pool. Again, that is something that expires after so long, and we're up at that expiration date. Strainer goes into the main pool pump where it really collects all of our dirt, hair, stuff for the pool. The good stuff. Yeah. So we need that to keep our pumps in good condition. Backstops. So I said 75,000. That's for Fox Valley Upper Right, Onatru 2 and Vista. The Onatru 1 that I replaced in the fall was $25,000. So I'm hoping that, since that was just a few months ago, we're in the same price point on that. Going down to paving. So Tony had mentioned that Joel, the maintenance department, had received some quotes or a quote in regards to paving Onatru. So with the entrance going down and the circle near our building, and then the parking lot in between recreation, maintenance, and part of the driveway back, not all the way around the access road, was roughly $125,000.
So that's not town park.
No, it's-
driveway.
No, but
It's on a true.
This
No,
is
no.
Onatru, but I'm comparing to
We use the
my
same number.
estimate of town park.
Because it's-
Oh,
because
space.
It's
Okay,
about
you-
the same,
you
yes,
lost me
yeah,
for a
sorry.
second. I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
So it's about the same amount of space because we don't have, we're not doing a parking lot. It's more of just a straight shot and the circle
Mm.
around the pool. So that's where an estimate of 125,000
You
would come into.
calculating surface area.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
On it, we know that Onatru and Fox Valley bathrooms both need updating. So with Fox Valley possibly being updated with that water treatment system and that
There's a
Covered by the grant.
grant opportunity.
the
there.
grant
Yeah.
opportunity, correct, then we have Onatru left.
Mhm.
Again, that's a renovation, an update, so not a complete knockdown. Redoing the floor surfacing,
Mhm.
considering, that is an epoxy floor that has chipped away. So maybe a better solution, new fixtures, toilets, stalls, painting, however, whatever we'd like to do, but again, estimating $100,000. And then Town Park Shed, which is over next to the basketball courts where the doors are basically falling off. And that's roughly 10 by 16. Could be less than $12,000. That's an estimate with bringing in a dumpster, carting away, because we do have to break that down.
So that totals 367. So that's the second bond resolution draft that we received is for that amount.
What's our approximate ARPA balance that we have on hand?
I think I have that on here. Is it on here or no? Oh, it's in my- oh,
Is it
there.
about 900 and something thousand?
934,000.
934,000.
About like 900 something.
$934,304 after the $350,000 to the town park playground.
So one of the options when I was looking at different scenarios, in scenario 3 here, we have this was assuming borrowing for the truck and the hot box. So forget about the fact that this is for a single truck. But putting that aside, if we used ARPA for Parks and Rec, that's this 367 here. And that would leave us with 567, 304 that we can use towards, and we need to decide pickleball and or the pool bathhouse.
So as Leo said, just because we're passing the resolution to borrow doesn't mean we actually have
Correct.
to borrow,
Right.
so. And we can decide
to use ARPA funds. We don't have to make that decision right now. I think that the conversation about ARPA is one that we need to have with a list of a wish list, and we can decide that we want to tick some of these off with those ARPA funds and then maybe use some ARPA funds for something else. I don't think we need to decide
Right.
right now. I think ARPA is a lengthy conversation for
and
another
pick-
town board meeting.
Correct.
soon.
So this is the focus tonight is on borrowing resolutions.
Right.
Whether we wanna
Picking
vote-
up, picking up on Andrew's point, I'd like to see a presentation as to, we're talking about borrowing. We're not seeing a breakdown of what our projected costs would be as far as what the annual nut to the town is going to be and its impact on the potential impact on our budget going out. So, you know, we're not really getting that. But that's not being presented to us. We're being presented with borrowing X dollars without showing how it's going to impact the town's financial picture going forward for the number of years, the amount of money that is, what the payments are going to be based upon certain assumptions that would have to be made for it. And that hasn't been presented to me. What's being presented to me is an amount of money that we're borrowing X dollars.
Well, in this spreadsheet, I did make an assumption on the interest rate and the annual principal payment. So that information is there.
So,
Now,
so that would
per
be,
Leo's earlier statement, we don't know what the rate is going to be until we go to market. Right, so we could make further scenarios like I did here with varying interest rates, and I'll let Leo speak to that, but.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to have a little context here, because 2 months ago, there was resistance in the budget to meet the cap about plugging that gap with give or take $30,000 to do that. There was pushback and reluctance to do that. So now we're going from having a discussion about $30,000 and now we're coming back 2 months later and to borrow what?
But these numbers
Really?
won't impact the 2023 budget.
and we also said very clearly during the budget period that this didn't include, any capital work that those items were gonna be
Okay.
discussed later.
All correct. I still want to see how
Yeah,
it
but if you want-
represents the numbers, just to make it as
I
an
mean, we
educated
could-
decision on its impact
We could
financially.
take, any one of these numbers and stick them in one of these amortization, calculators and assume, length of time and get an annual
Well,
number out of it if you want.
Well, based upon what I heard Andrew say and what Dan say and what Leo said, we have a 2-week window that those, we could have a little time to digest it. And still be in the window to borrow. I'd like to have that presented to us so we can take our time and be deliberative as to what the impact's gonna be and make an educated decision.
So,
But the decision you'd be making 2 weeks from now would be
if you
the
don't
same
borrow,
decision that you'd be making tonight,
I
basically.
mean, if you don't borrow, then you're not doing these projects.
But I want
mean,
to see,
it's-
right, that's correct. What you're saying, Tony, is correct. I want to see the financial impact of it. This was presented Wednesday night, and now on Monday, we're talking about borrowing the amount of money we're talking about borrowing here, like close to $1 million. So I'd like to have a little time to digest it, to make an educated decision about whether we want to borrow another $1 million.
So Leo, the impact to waiting another 2 weeks is, like you mentioned earlier, there's the Estafel, which we,
Won't have enough time available to allow for the estoppel period
right,
to pass. So the downside to that is the resolutions probably require
redrafting.
redrafting a line or two. And disclosure in the marketing circular saying that to the investor that to just warn them that the estoppel period has not passed.
Right,
So investors like the estoppel period to pass because that pretty much clears any contesting of the debt issuance. But there's still that, for the most part, that doesn't really prevent them or really influence them to not buy. It's just another insurance policy for them.
right. So in terms of providing what Rich is asking by the next board meeting, I guess we would need to build a table with various interest rates,
Yeah, you're not going to,
because we don't know what the interest rate's gonna be, right? Currently, it's like 1.63%,
what we have outstanding now is at a rate of 1.6.
right?
If we decide to pass this right now, would we be able to we would save our, what's the word that you just used as far as the guarantee?
We stop.
The estoppel period, that will make the investors more secure in their investment in the town of Lewisboro. In that we're giving them that security, but we are not locking in at a specific amount. If we go ahead and approve it tonight, we're just reassuring our investors that we've got their back
Yes.
in general terms.
So what would the term on highway equipment be if it was going to a long-term thing? Like you can stretch it out for 10 years? or
15 years,
15 years,
15 years,
okay, so
as well as park and rec. 15 years. PPU as well.
15 years.
But I think his question is if we convert to a bond.
That's the.
Well, eventually you have to.
However, you know, before you convert to a bond, you can assume that it's a 15-year life. And you can divide the principal amount by 15 and get a reasonable annual principal service expense.
That's what I did here. So that's where these numbers come from. So it's divided by 15. But again, that's based on.
That's for the 3, 5.
6. That's for one truck and one.
Even, you know, oftentimes, Dave, you frame like expenditures in light of household expenditure. We don't even have that context here. If we do X, it's gonna cost X dollars per household, so we don't have that calculation.
Well,
So this
if I just
time-
plug 614,000 into 15 years at 5%, just for kicks here. And get a monthly payment of $4,855. So what's that? That's $60,000 a year. And yeah,
Supported by
4,000 households, that's $15 a household on your taxes. Right?
Is that, that's what you're looking for, Rich, right?
No, I'm
That's
just
what
saying,
it's
I'm saying, I don't, you know, I was just giving you an example. I
Yeah.
was having the context. Still don't know what the other things are. So,
So, you know, if for the total there, it's maybe, you know, $20 a household, additional, you know, $25 a household a year.
Mhm.
That this adds to the tax bill.
and also we haven't had a discussion, which I've been asking for an extended period of time in light of ARPA. I mean, we just thought we have $900,000 in ARPA. And on one hand, we haven't developed priorities as far as infrastructure, how we want to spend it, and over what time period we want to spend it. On the other hand, we're talking about borrowing, or what, over $900,000. So we have over $900,000 in the bank in ARPA funds, and then we're coming and saying, let's borrow over $900,000 to stuff we have sitting in the bank. So we should at least balance that out and go through the process. So we can determine, you know, how we want to do it in the most cost-effective way.
I think that's a valid point, except the truck thing is a little weird because we're not spending the money right now. So I think that only applies maybe to the pool stuff.
Yeah, so keep in mind that with ARPA, we have until the end of 2024 to decide where we're gonna spend it. And we have until 2026 to spend it.
Okay, well, I'd still like to have a less ad hoc determination as to how we're spending money, as opposed to thinking about how we want to do it. And this is something that Dave's mentioned also for a year, 5 years, 10 years, how we want to plan it out, whether it's capital investment, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's equipment or a combination thereof. We should just, you know, not be reactive. Let's take a little time, process it, and see how we want to go.
And we're gonna do that. So we're not saying that we won't, we will do that. But the question here is, do we want to take advantage of the fact that we have the span that's coming up for reissue and include any additional borrowing against it?
By authorizing the
have-
borrowing for the trucks, we're saying we're not
Committed.
committed to it. So if we come up with a better way to finance it, before we actually have to.
And
pay
Rip himself said that there is the possibility of renting it, as we have in the past. I thought I remember hearing him say that he would look into that to see whether that would be a more cost-effective way of doing it. So then we wouldn't have to borrow them.
Right,
So
again,
that-
we're just borrowing up to these amounts. We're not saying that we will borrow these amounts. We're just looking for the ability to borrow up to those amounts. And then if we choose not to, if we choose to use all ARPA funds to cover all the Parks and Rec projects and not spend $367,000
Then we
in the
don't
ban, then we
borrow it.
don't.
But as far as the truck's concerned, we need to authorize it just so we can place the order, else we're not in the queue.
That's right.
For those.
I think Nicole, you can sit down.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Nicole.
So I guess that's the decision needs to be made, is do we want to motion to approve the borrowing resolutions as drafted for the purpose of this meeting?
I would support this.
As far as I'm concerned, if we have a time issue, let's have, want to have a work session sometime next week, we can do that. You're asking us to approve borrowing of $1 million on 3 days' notice. I don't think that's the way to do it. That's my opinion.
But we're not borrowing. I mean, like I said earlier, my preference is not to borrow. We could use all of ARPA towards these. That'd be my preference. It's free money.
Well,
Although we are making, Rio confirmed for me today that we're earning 3-point-something percent, 383 on the ARPA funds today. So
Okay.
there's some advantage to,
Yeah, there's a
Keep
net savings by.
gonna say something.
We're kind of going circular. I'd like to hear, Tony, what your spending priorities would be referable to ARPA funds as well as the borrowing. I'd like to see it and evaluate it at the same time, because the
Right.
numbers, everything's
So-
contingent upon other
Yeah.
things, so.
So we have time to discuss what we're gonna spend ARPA money on. And I shared with the board, from my perspective, you want something that's gonna give the biggest bang for the buck to the residents. And that includes things like Parks and Rec facilities,
Exactly, so let's sit down and talk about it, how one
and
impacts
we
the other.
will, and we will. But it doesn't impact what we're doing here tonight.
You just, I'm confused, because you just said that we want to use ARPA money for the biggest bang for the buck, including Parks and Recreation.
Right.
Here in front of us is
So
a
if we have-
resolution to borrow $367,000 for Parks and Recreation.
Right, but it's not, we're not committing to the borrowing. So when we do have our work session in 2 weeks, we can make that determination. So,
This ban proposal is to make it so we make the estoppel deadline.
I understand that,
doesn't-
and I get that, and I heard from Leo, it's not a major difference as far as being able to do what we need to do. I also heard that from Leo, both in his email and reaffirming it during his presentation tonight. I want to sit down and figure out what our spending priorities are, both with the ARPA money. We have the money, we have to sit down and do it, so I'm willing to spend the time and do it. And I don't know, it's been delayed, I've been talking about it for a long period of time. It's an opportunity, potentially once in a generation opportunity to address the things, Tony, you're talking about. So let's sit down and discuss it. Let's see what our priority list is as far as the stuff.
well, right now, this is the priority list. Based on what I got from department heads, this is the
Well,
priority list.
it's a priority list because we're bumping up against this deadline, which we were just advised, unfortunately.
No, if you look at the scenarios I presented, there's scenarios of using ARPA and not necessarily the borrowing. And like I said earlier, I'd rather not borrow this much, but we're not committing to the borrowing. We're just committing to adopting the resolution that allows us to borrow.
I understand. We're going circular. That I gave you my view on. My view is we should sit
So-
down and take a look at all the things we can do. You have the opportunity to do it in a 2-week window. We should discuss it in light of the ARPA priorities that you as supervisor have, and we can evaluate it in light of what we can borrow and what we have in the bank and figure out the best way to go. That's my take.
So Leo, you're look at you as our former controller who has experience with bond counsel and with drafting these resolutions. Is it worth waiting the 2 weeks? If we're only going to decide, it's basically, we're going to be back to the same decision, right? Whether or not we want to borrow. Right? So does it make sense to go through the process with bond counsel to redraft these resolutions
And I heard.
and remove the estoppel notice?
Yeah, there's a little difference with waiting for 2 weeks. We heard today that it would require just revising the resolution and putting disclosure into the marketing circular. If the board is not settled tonight, it probably makes sense to wait.
Okay.
The board can be settled on what it wants to.
Right.
Borrow.
So does the board want to table this for 2 weeks?
Just to
At
be,
which
just
point
to be
we'll have-
clear, the removal of the estoppel notice, does that potentially raise the cost of the borrowing?
It should not.
Should,
It
okay.
should not.
Yeah.
But you put in the word potential. I have to say, there is. Potential.
And that potential could be half a point. Maybe a quarter of a point, you don't know. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'll ask the board. I mean, for the board, do you want to wait 2 weeks and go through this process with bond counsel to redraft the resolutions?
I mean, I think we do want to go through our, our bigger sort of desires here, but these things, we need these things. There's no question about it.
Mhm.
It's not gonna change the big picture. So I'd be fine doing it now, but
Yeah, I mean, one of the options is to, because it sounds like with the trucks, I think we're all in agreement that we would not take those off of ARPA, pay for those off of ARPA.
Those are nothing. I wouldn't agree to pay for trucks from ARPA funds.
Correct. Are you in agreement with that, Rich?
Yeah, so you never priced out what you were mentioning, Tony. You're mentioning I thought you said the one truck, the hot box, and then the dump or something, whatever that was, right?
The dump
Third thing?
box, right?
Okay, so what's the total cost of that?
Well, the dump box, so we would have to, it's approximately 85,000 additional. Or we can vote to take that from the highway fund balance. That's another option to pay for that.
And I don't think Peter Ripinger would recommend that.
Yeah.
If
He
we
likes
had
to protect his
yeah,
fund
no,
balance.
Yeah, we had a discussion. He would be receptive to that.
My thought is that I think I'm more willing to move ahead with the bond resolution having to do with the purchase of the 2 vehicles and the hot box tonight.
Okay.
Because this has to be done and because we have to put in the order and it's going to take a long period of time. If we're going to have a discussion involving ARPA and borrowing for other capital projects in Parks and Rec, and everyone feels more comfortable postponing it 2 weeks. I don't have a problem with that because to me, that number is more malleable and kind of all over the place. It could expand and contract, but I think that Peter's request under highway is pretty specific. That said, I have to agree with Rich that I don't feel comfortable being in this situation again in the future where we're given a very short period of time and a deadline of a meeting to make a decision having to do with such large sums of money, borrowing or otherwise. And I feel like it would have been nice to have the informational session with Leo ahead of time, a little educational session with both of them ahead of time so that we as a board understood because this is a lot. I mean, look, I'm an attorney, criminal defense attorney, other numbers and stuff, not my area of expertise. When I went to law school, the only thing I wanted to abide by was 33 1/3 because that was my cut of the fate. That's all my math. So
That's why I sent
this-
you a PDF version of this, by the way.
This still is like, blah, blah, blah. I need someone to take me by the hand and explain it to me so that I feel like I'm making the proper decision. It's a lot to digest for someone that doesn't deal with numbers like this on a day-to-day basis. So I would have liked a little more time to digest it, understand it, and be prepared to come here tonight and vote on a resolution the way you would have liked us to proceed. And I understand, you try to organize things and get them out there and get them done. But me personally, I feel like a few times in the past several months, my back is up against the wall and you have to make a decision now, Andrea, because, there's this deadline. And had we had a few more weeks to consider, or even one more session to listen to, I would feel more comfortable moving ahead that way. But that said, on the highway bonds, I am more comfortable moving ahead with that one, and Parks and Rec one, I feel that I can wait.
Okay, so
Why are you saying this? So I'm picking up what Andrew's saying moving forward. So why, in the issue, I think I'm comfortable with that. So why are you saying, Tony, one truck as opposed to two? What's your position on that?
because I think we can get more life out of these two vehicles.
That's.
I mean, one vehicle, the one that he's looking to sell, I think we could continue using that as a log truck.
But do we really need to have that discussion tonight? Because we're borrowing
Yeah,
up to
we're-
a certain amount.
exactly. So we don't need to have that
What
discussion,
trucks
right?
we decide to buy and in what order is a topic that we can cover later, but we
Right.
know at most it's gonna cost $614,000. If ultimately we decide to go Tony's route and we spend less money or we borrow less money, so be it.
So if that's the case, why don't we do both? Parks and Rec and the trucks? We don't necessarily have to spend up to that amount. And we can have the discussion of how we want to use that money. And we don't even have
That's
to
fine,
use
yeah.
that amount of money.
Mhm.
My humble.
I'd be okay with that
my humble-
because we already did the legwork with bond counsel to get the resolutions drafted and,
That's the
Yeah.
change that Leo said, we're changing a sentence or two in the estoppel issue. So that's the tail wagging the dog. So I'm okay moving forward with the highway one tonight. And the
Okay.
other one ties into a bigger policy decision as far as ARPA versus otherwise. So, and
All right,
plus
so-
also
so let's-
ensuring with the Parks and Rec stuff as opposed to the highway to make sure that every component is competitive and can be bid out. With the highway truck is
Okay.
different.
oh yeah, with the
Because
Parks
it's the
and Rec,
only-
it will be bid
Because
out.
it's the only one in town, apparently, I should go into the big truck business.
Right.
To get it anywhere else.
So I'd like to motion that we approve the $614,000 borrowing resolution for the purchase of the highway equipment
Up to 614.
up to 614.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Do we need a roll call vote?
Yeah.
We need roll call, Greg? Okay. Okay, so Rich,
All right, thank you, everybody, for their input to get us to this.
Mary.
It was productive.
Shot, yes.
yes.
Brendo, yes.
Yes.
Right,
And we'll
So long.
table the other.
yeah, I don't think we need to do anything with the other, it's we just.
And if you want to have a work session between now and then.
We'll have one next meeting, yep. So, the next, correct, yes.
Yeah.
So the next item
Thank you, Jen.
is,
Human being.
yeah, so I had sent an email, maybe 2 weeks ago, so to the board regarding the current rates that we are charged by Keenan Bean. They serve as the council for planning board and town wetlands. And so there's two rates. At present, they charge us $195 an hour for services performed for the town. This includes wetland enforcement, general planning board issues, not specific to pending applications, assistance on town planning initiatives, litigation and day-to-day advice and assistance rendered to the planning board and related staff. They also charge $225 an hour for application-specific services, which are paid from escrows posted by planning board applicants. They're not looking to raise the hourly fee that they charge the town, but they are looking to raise their $225 an hour to $245, which again is
That is an hourly rate increase.
I'm sorry.
You just said
Not
they're
to
not, you just said they're not, they don't want to increase the rate, but going from 225 to.
No, they don't
No,
want-
no, no,
No,
Yeah.
no.
From the applicants.
Let me repeat. So they're not going to change the rate they charge to the town, which is the $195 an hour. What they do want to increase is the rate that's for application-specific services, which the applicant pays for. Which is currently $225. They want to increase that to $245 an hour.
So what's the example of
The
that type of
application.
work?
Applicants that are in front of the planning board and council gets involved in that application process.
I'll give you, for instance, my understanding was there was an application pending in front of the planning board for which the applicant submitted documents in consideration of their point of view. And that they requested and they got by way of a FOIL request. And the applicant received the bill from Keenan Bean because they decided they wanted to review the documents that the applicant had requested by FOIL in consideration of moving the application along, and they got a nice $1,000 bill for the work that it took to review the documents that they requested in
But
the
they also-
application process.
Stormwater management easements.
Yeah.
Licenses.
And some of the
Maybe that's
projects.
approval license.
Yeah.
Very well be doing that. That's the application.
And I think with the increase, isn't that less than neighboring municipalities?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Well, I can speak firsthand to Judd, having been on the planning board for a few years. I think he's done an outstanding job in my tenure at the planning board. Very incredibly knowledgeable in this area, done an exemplary job for the town, always well versed in everything we had to discuss with them and always available. So I think it's fine.
And it's still less than our neighboring towns.
So does someone want a motion?
Are we just motioning for the increase, or are you signing an updated agreement and we have to authorize you to sign it?
You're gonna have to authorize the hourly rate.
No. All right, so I move that we authorize the increase in the hourly rate for Keenan Bean for the resident escrow submissions from $225 up to $245.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, the next item is it's a resolution authorizing the increase in salary for our Parks and Rec supervisor. This was a discussion that was had. We had obviously a salary discussion during the budget. This discussion happened post-budget discussions. And the board agreed to move forward with the salary increase effective with pay period number 2 of this year.
I saw the email exchange. I'm a little confused as to why we need a resolution on this. I think we already authorized supervisor to make the change. And I thought there was something for you, Greg, that we didn't need to go by resolution, or we can, or.
You have a choice. Do you have the authorization in your organizational meeting? The supervisors to make budget transfers up to a certain amount
Mhm.
per month. And that could be, that's an authorization not to do what's being affected here.
Right. And we already
You can also do
decided
it by
that.
resolution.
All right, so yes, we have the authorizing
Should be authorizing it. You have the
authority already,
based on
and
what
we
you-
all, and the whole board voted on that already, so I don't see what.
because it was not,
We don't
So-
need a resolution. Tony would just
the
like.
proper way to
have
do
a-
it is with the resolution.
There's no, he just said there is no proper, either way that to do it is just fine.
Right,
We've already
yeah.
done it.
Right.
Board members can also introduce you.
So one of the things that going through the budget discussion last December, we had certain salary numbers which were not accurate going into the resolution. And there was a lot of question from the public and from board members about those numbers. Which when you look at them, it overinflated the projected raises that we gave people. And so I had to redo a spreadsheet to show the actual salaries for 2022 and then consider the salary numbers that we were talking about 2.5%, 4%, ultimately we went with 4%. I want to avoid that. So with this, it's full transparency as to who got a raise. And then it's also reflected in the next budget. And if there's any question about it, we can say that it was approved by the board.
So I have no objection to doing that. I'll just point out though that same situation may hold for any line item transfers.
Yep.
Where at the end of the year, we
Correct.
should
Mhm.
capture them all to make sure we're seeing the right numbers in the budget.
Good suggestion.
Do periodic budget adjustments that are by resolution.
Yeah, I agree. In fact,
Quarterly, monthly, whatever, and then keep the.
so I got feedback from one of the supervisors meetings that this is what they do. They pass a resolution, but they do have these regular budget adjustment meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just have an item on your agenda where.
Yeah.
You should go through whatever, every period of time you're making budget adjustments.
Right. Right.
Okay, because some things have to come out of some lines because they're over and something that is.
Right.
Short. And that
Right.
way, anything like this would be authorized, periodically, at least 4 times a year, quarterly, sometimes monthly, whatever
Right.
you're comfortable doing. And
Mhm.
obvious, to me, it obvious, you for the resolution you did if you were working, necessarily because the board's gonna make every decision.
Right.
That's entirely up to you to deal
Right.
with that. It's 1.4.
Right.
That's.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an unnecessary redundancy. We already took care of it. We were in agreement on
But it wasn't publicized. Usually whenever we have any adjustments, like we recently did with whenever we hire somebody or make an adjustment to, for example, he was not here anymore, but with his bringing him on as a consultant, we passed a resolution for that. And so this is something I want
Because
to,
that was a different status, because he'd
Well, it's-
retired effectively December 31 and we continued him in a different role.
We all agreed to do it the way that we did it.
but we
So
could have
you-
adjusted.
But
Yeah.
we all agreed to do it the
Yeah.
way that we did it. You've decided that you don't want to do it that way, and so now we all have to do it again because you want to do it again.
That's correct, because it's
Ah, okay.
it's a resolution to.
No, you just want to do what you want to do. We agreed to do, all of us, majority agreed to do it a certain way, and you have independently decided to do it another way, and now we have to go along with you.
So
Right.
I want full transparency because that was lacking when I went, this is my first budget review that we did, and some of that was missing. And so I want full transparency. And that's why, and the other part of it is,
So
Again.
why didn't you, I don't understand. After we voted, did we not, wasn't it a resolution that
No.
was added?
there
So
was not a
then why-
resolution. That's why we're doing one now. We should have done a resolution, we didn't.
You're right, that's right. We did not do a resolution. We did a
Right,
vote for
right.
you to transfer money, which we
Correct,
did.
but
Greg,
this is a substantial amount that's taken from our
Greg, can any-
contingency budget line.
Greg, can any citizen foil to find out what any employee for the town makes?
In terms of the compensation.
Yeah.
Certainly be redacted from the payroll information, but.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Probably.
And just add another, in attending these supervisors meetings, they do this. They all pass whenever there is a request for a salary change, it's done via resolution.
I know, but
For the full transparency and public
just
awareness.
because everybody else does it, doesn't mean that we have to do it.
But then I don't want people going back to me next budget, say you weren't transparent about this. And then
Now
the
we've,
other,
now we've had a full discussion on the
Yeah.
record. I don't think there's no any reason to pass a resolution at all. I think we just move on. Transparency completed.
no, transparency not complete.
We just had a whole discussion in a public
It's-
forum. Everybody now knows. We've already voted. We already
So,
made a decision as a majority, and yeah, you're changing what we did because, and I'm not. It's already been done, and
But
whether we
that's
vote,
where-
whether we vote on this resolution or not, does not change the fact that we've already voted to give a raise. And it's not gonna overturn it. And now everyone who's watching, anyone who watches the recorded meeting, and anybody who's sitting here now knows that Nicole Caviola got a raise. Now we're done. I'm not voting again.
so anyway, this is the proper way to do it.
There's
Again,
no
based
power, like
based
you
on,
just said. They're both
Let me-
proper,
they're both proper, but this is the way.
that you want to do it.
It's what I want to do, but it's also based on, as supervisor, learning from supervisors' meetings that I've attended, this is the way it should be done. It doesn't need to be done this way, but it should be done this way. And then, and the other, I've had my opinions about the specific situation, right? Where, we talked about the,
We talked about a lot of things that we've talked about. And we have expressed our opinions and we voted and it's done.
but I'd like it to be formalized in the form of a resolution, as we do with anybody else that, and apparently this has never, it's a situation that has never, we've never had, from what I've learned, has never happened before in terms of this type of request coming outside of the budget discussions
No
And-
one's
and-
ever gotten a raise in this one before.
during budget. During budget is when raises are discussed. The other piece of it is, it was done before the probation period ended, which, I had discussed with the employee that we need to wait until the probation period is done and expired before we can consider.
So Greg, what
Right, so-
happens if there's a resolution and the resolution is not passed? Does that mean that the raise doesn't happen, or does our prior vote still stand?
The determination was that the board was in favor of raising, and the supervisor could authorize the additional compensation through that authorization and passage of the agreement.
Right, so if this resolution doesn't pass, does that change our prior determination? Does it revoke the raise that was given if we don't vote on it?
What I think is happening here is that the supervisor declining the authorization that was been given, we want to formalize.
I want to formalize the resolution because that's how I was taught that that's the way to do it and to be fully transparent.
So he's, basically what you're saying is that the supervisor is refusing to do what we voted for him to do.
What,
I'm not. What
no,
I'm saying is.
so what is
authorization
the,
Given to
Yeah.
the supervisor in that resolution. The supervisor is now asking for action.
right,
You guys have to decide whether you want to.
well, and what is the drawback to having this vote now and put it in form of a resolution?
It's a waste of time.
We're wasting more time discussing it.
Guess it should have never been put on the agenda then. Because it was already
And
decided.
I was taught that it should be on the agenda.
Okay,
So
I
that's-
move that we authorize the increase in salary for the Parks and Rec supervisor as previously voted on in executive session.
Can't do it.
No,
It's previously authorized.
as
Previously authorized.
previously authorized.
We need to specify the amount
I
I don't think.
in the amount.
I
well,
don't think that's necessary.
Second,
Yeah, if you want to be transparent.
Okay, so that
So the
brings
amount-
that it brings the amount to,
To $82,500 effective pay period number 2.
second has amended.
Discussion.
Yeah, discussion. Nicole, we're getting a great deal. Thank you for all your hard work for the community.
I appreciate all
Keep
the,
on keeping them.
all the work that you've done and your creative approach.
End of my discussion.
Thank you, Nicole.
Roll call.
Rich,
Yes.
Shaw, yes.
Tony, I abstain. Based on prior discussions, yeah, with the candidate.
Absolutely, yes, she's worth every single penny.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. The discussion about the Meadowsville Cross River Sewage Works Corporation's request for sewage treatment rate increase. I don't know if Andrea Scalzo, yeah, she's on. Maybe she can unmute her and have her speak to this a bit.
Can she raise her hand, please?
Yeah, I see her here, but,
Yeah.
oh, there she goes.
Hello, can you hear me?
The motion to increase the rates, so we will need to have discussion.
We, sure, if the board is comfortable, we don't need, I mean, so she's unmuted. If we have any questions for Andrea, so this is a 23% increase. Which according to talking to Greg, this is something that the municipality needs to approve. It's been approved by their by their management company.
The Sewer Works Corporation is owned by Meadows. It's formed under what's known as the Transportation Corporation. Really big section of state law.
Except it's neither transportation nor corporate.
So their formation to be a private sewer works operator has to be consented to by the municipality where the facility lies. And so many years ago, and that was the development, that transportation corporation was approved. And the process is, if they go under, town takes them over. So the town's supposed to hold the original stock certificates in escrow, whatever lease agreement they have in escrow, so that if there's a failure of the operator to properly treat either the water or the sewer in this particular case, or in the particular case, that the town can step in immediately without having to worry about having a wrestling match with the actual corporation for control. So that the public is not imperiled by the lack of the treatment of the waste. News to me, because I always thought they were governed by the Public Service Commission, I still think they are. There is a provision in the Transportation Corporation law for the operator to get their rates approved by the local municipality. I've never seen it in 27 years, but apparently it was done most recently about 3 years ago. For this particular entity comes and does it for the board before I was here.
Right.
It's certainly authorized under law for them to come and seek the approval of the local municipality for the rates and going.
Right.
This is who on
This is
the line now?
The Meadows across.
The managing
the
agent
management
for the water sewer district.
Do you have any questions for Andrea?
Maybe through, you made a comment in some of your material about that you thought maybe a special assessment, or was it you or?
Yeah, it was me. I wasn't sure whether,
Was that before, because you thought some of the items were sort of temporary or one-off things, or, and so maybe that's a question.
Well,
ahead.
perhaps I can shed a little light, because when Tony and I spoke earlier, I was thinking about what he said about the increase. I actually went back and took a look, and we had an increase in 2013, so 10 years ago. And then we did a minimal increase in 2020. So if you average it out for what we're asking now, it's really 5% or less annually. So it's not.
I don't know who we're speaking to.
I said she's the management company, Andrea Scalzo from the management.
Okay, well,
company.
she didn't identify herself in her role in this.
Oh, I apologize. I'm Andrea Scalzo, the managing agent for Meadows at Cross River Sewer Corp. and Homeowners Association. And the Board of Managers for Meadows has authorized me to speak to you. And they have approved the budget that we are proposing for 2023 that includes this rate increase.
Have we received a copy of that budget that was approved by the Board of Managers?
No, we did not.
We sent a letter.
There was a letter
was a letter.
that's in the agenda packet. That's
Yeah,
all.
that's a
we
letter,
received.
but we don't have, it should be, a Board of Managers would have had a resolution with a properly convened meeting approving it, right?
Yes, but I can send you the budget. I'm more than happy to do that. But it is a confusing budget because it also includes New York City DEP expenses and allocation and reimbursement as
No,
well.
I'm just talking about the resolution of the Board of Managers
Oh,
that adopted it. What you're here to, you're the conduit of the information. And you're coming and talking to us about something that the Board of Managers approved, right?
Correct. That's
At a
an,
properly convened meeting and approved what they wanted to do and for us to execute on, right?
correct.
Except we haven't seen a copy of the Board of Managers meeting resolution saying they approved it,
Well, I stated that in the letter, but
but not the actual resolution.
I'm happy to put it in resolution form. We have our minutes.
Well, that's how you properly conduct business as the managing agent, right? The Board of Managers convenes, you have a quorum, you take a vote, and you memorialize the vote, right?
Yes, along with all of their other minutes. That's why I stated it in the letter.
So the letter has, it has the projected increase. But what you're looking for is an actual resolution or meeting minutes from the HOA.
Yeah,
From the management
that's our
company.
legal permission slip. Here's the Board of Managers approval in the
Right.
proper way that they're supposed to do it, as opposed to somebody who didn't even initially identify themselves, saying, could you increase the sewer rates?
Do we want
And
to?
here I am, I don't even know who this person is on the on the phone.
I only got that part. Do we want to approve this contingent on receipt of that and satisfactory?
Yeah, contingent upon council reviewing that it was properly done, that's no problem.
Okay, then our part
Does
is.
council agree with that?
No problem. In
Okay.
terms of, evidence of the budget was approved by the Board of Managers.
Right. Okay.
Good on.
Okay. So I'll motion to approve the Meadows at Cross River Sewage Works Corporation's request for sewage treatment rate increase contingent on them supplying the meeting minutes or a resolution showing approval of such increase
Reviewed by council.
and reviewed by town council. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Andrew.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Do you want
All right.
me to read Kathy's? No.
Yeah, that's for public comment. But we can-
It's about Zoom.
Yeah,
Public
so go
comment.
ahead. So read that. It'll fit in well. Sarah.
Okay, the board received this email from Kathy Deutsch. Mr. Gonzalez and Board of Directors, as a longtime Lewisboro homeowner, I believe that residents who have an interest in the health and agendas of our community appreciate. Oh my God. And in fact, are entitled to have the opportunity to be participants. And frankly, shocked at the new decision not to provide comments via Zoom at board meetings. Over the past few years, I've seen our community acknowledge the need for inclusively in many areas and have been encouraged that we, in fact, are nurturing a more cohesive, generous, spirited community. This decision counters this forward motion to engage citizens with a poorly and contentiously adopted decision. If the logic in this decision, if I understood correctly upon viewing the meeting, was to eliminate contentious comments that cross lines of civility via phone, I honestly don't understand the effectiveness of this decision, as an out-of-line caller can immediately be disconnected, whereas an irate citizen in person will be hard to silence or remove, making in-person commenting potentially broadly disruptive. Our community is made up of various types of households, including the following, who are largely unable to attend live: single-parent households, the elderly, those ill or chronically compromised, the handicapped, or those with mobility issues, and those that for personal reasons are still not comfortable gathering in an enclosed, unmasked space. As this decision was clearly not favored by the board, it is apparent that it bears further discussion and hopeful amendment. We are, after all, a democracy. If any board members would like to respond, I'd be very happy to know if I've been heard and am interested in greater understanding of this issue. Respectfully, Kathy Deutsch.
I think that letter essentially echoes every other written communication I've seen on this issue from the public.
Not just written, but phone calls and in-person exchanges as well.
Yeah, so with that, we do have this as a discussion item, so just to cut to the chase, I'm gonna reinstitute the public comment thing. We've been lax on enforcing the rules. So I think we're gonna do a better job of enforcing the rules. And hopefully the conduct of a few will not, I don't want it to jeopardize or prevent the majority who behave as they should during public commenting. So this is why I came to this decision. So I'm going to be reinstituting the public comment over Zoom. And hopefully the defamatory remarks that have been made will cease, and we will continue to be supportive to the community with Zoom. I was a proponent of Zoom when prior supervisor, there was discussion back in September 2021 to do away with it. Many communities around us have done away with Zoom altogether. Some of them have actually done away with public comment, even in person. So we're not doing that. Yeah, so I think we're going back to where we were, but we're going to have more, do a better job at tightening things and enforcing.
So the rules you're talking about, just so we're clear and I have a clear understanding, the rules you're talking about enforcing are which ones?
The ones that are currently in our meeting rules,
Which was updated, I think, in September of
2021, correct?
So that's essentially being extended to Zoom comments as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And currently Zoom comments are not, we're not bound to supporting Zoom in general or commenting. But we will continue supporting.
Well,
Zoom.
I think that's good. It should be consistent. We also had somebody that called in to do town business, without even being here. So.
Right, yeah.
So I think we should
So-
be kind of across the board as for being consistent to encourage Zoom communications.
If I
Right.
may, since I did not get a word in edgewise at the last meeting, I think it's really important that we practice accessibility, inclusivity, and consideration of everyone's feelings. There's a quote I found from Elizabeth Gorham. She said, civic engagement is very important. We all live here together and we need to look out for one another. And what we need to do is be considerate of each other's emotions and think about the future of Lewisboro together. I was really upset at the thought of the idea of cutting off input from my fellow citizens who I was elected to represent. And I think I can do a better job if I hear from everybody. I may not like everything that everyone says, but it's not my job to like what they say. It's my job to listen and consider the bigger picture for all of us.
Can I hop on a quote there? Ben Franklin, it is the first responsibility of every citizen to question authority.
Now, having said that, our public comment rules state that there is no dialogue. It's a public comment period only,
As it always has been.
right? And I've been guilty of engaging during public comment, even as a board member. And it's just in my nature to want to do that, but I think we're going to need to stick to the rules. So next, public comment for new business items only. Anybody here want to speak?
Simone from Vista. I'm glad that you put the public comments back in. I really feel, Mr. Town Supervisor, you directed a lot of that prior decision towards me. I did not ask you a salacious question. I asked you something that people were talking about. And
So this is not,
New business.
this is
This
not
is new business.
related
It's
to
not
new
new
business. No,
It's out. It's new business.
Yeah.
So I'm following your rules. And you said you're not going to engage. It's my public comment
Okay.
period.
Mhm.
I asked you to set the record straight. You didn't have to. It was my public comment period. You chose to, and then came back with the whole thing about being a bully, about think before be kind, do all this stuff. I think it was unfair. I'm a private citizen and you are a council member, town supervisor. I was concerned with monies. I was concerned with decisions being made. I asked a question. That's all I did. You may not have liked it. I apologize for that. I think I even said I was sorry, but I felt the need to ask. So if I offended you, I am sorry. I did come here and sit through this 3-hour meeting because I wanted my fellow neighbors to be able to listen on Zoom, and people who can access and come here and sit here for this length of time. So I understand, but I don't believe for you to say that now we're going to have these rules where you're going to cut people off, because I do remember Mr. Welsh doing that quite a few times and screaming ad hominem, ad hominem. If a question is asked that you don't like, don't answer it. And don't cut people off because they're asking serious questions. I work, I have 4 kids, I pay taxes. I don't come here to waste time. I asked a question on behalf of my neighbors.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh,
Glenda Faber, Cross River. Quick thing on the master plan. There should be nothing to do with race in that plan. I find it offensive and racist to feel that a certain color lives in a certain kind of house. That's crazy. If you want diversity, it should be economic diversity, not racial diversity. I see names up here. So we should assume that Dan, because his name is Welsh, is the richest, and Tony, because he's got a Portuguese name, he's the poorest. Doesn't work that way.
it's true, by the way.
It should not, well, that would be true too. That should not be in a planning statement. Okay. Now, as far as what I came up here for, you know, Tony, I've known you since we were on the housing committee. And I don't know what's gotten over you. You were a guy that would listen. And after what went down about cutting people off, I said, what the hell was said? I reviewed everything over the last couple meetings. There was nothing. Simone asked a specific question. If you work for the town and you're getting paid by our tax dollars, you have to be ready for people to ask questions. She asked the question. I've been a private investigator for 40 years. And to be honest with you, Tony, what she said, a lot of people have been suspecting, a lot of people think. I'm glad you answered it, but you have to answer it because the town is liable if there's any kind of suit due to what's going on. Nothing is going on. I'm not saying it is, but just because you don't like what people say, the First Amendment is there to protect speech that the government doesn't like. Because if you only could say what the government likes, there would be no need for the First Amendment. Thanks a lot. And let's get back to where we were before. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Carol Cernak, South Salem. Thank Tony, good decision. I'm glad you saw the error of your ways. As far as the discussion for the borrowing resolution from the highway department, I'm still actually wondering where is the line item to remove the timber pile at the salt dome for the highway? Where is, I mean, that's going to cost $100,000 to remove that pile. I don't understand why it's not in the budget. Are you going to borrow money to remove that too? That's it.
Anybody else? Because
Hi, good evening, Julia Hadlock. I live in South Salem. I just wanted to actually reinforce the decision that you made, and I think it's whatever you guys decided as a board to do to reverse it, but I think it's important for the public to understand that public meetings, open meeting laws does not require you to offer Zoom public comment, and I think you're doing that as a service to the community, and it should not be an entitlement of the community by law. There is no entitlement that the community be able to participate by Zoom. So I think it's really important that part of being here and participating in person is that you do have to sit through the meeting. And sometimes they are long. When you participate from home, I think you can kind of tune out the meeting and hop in for public comment. And part of that is your responsibility to watch the whole meeting and listen and attend to it in a way that you might not do so at home. So I do think if you are interested in public comment and you are able, it is important to come to the meeting and participate, be face-to-face and be in the meeting. I think that's really, really important. So I encourage people who public comment is important to them to actually come to the meetings and be here. I think it's also really important to recognize that the intention of Zoom public comment is to engage more people, but most research has shown that that has not actually occurred. And in many cases, it's created a narrow participation by a small number of people. I've observed that through our town meetings. And I think that there are other ways to engage the community. I encourage you to think about doing that. I look forward to being with you on the 26th to welcome our new town board members. I mean, our new town members. And thank you. I think, I appreciate your approach, but I do want people to realize that this is not anything illegal that you've done in the past by changing your public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Anybody else?
Michelle Sobosinski, South Salem. I came here specifically to thank Simone and Carol for always participating and always commenting. And thank you for restoring Zoom comments. I think it's very important that the public does have the opportunity, although it generally is the two ladies. And I just urge you, please be careful in cutting off people. I think we do have to have those rules that were instituted in 21, profanity or what other, inappropriate comments, but not comments that you might not like. Free speech is important, but thank you very much. And thank you all for your service, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak? No. So well, since I reinstated it, might as well, let's go ahead.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, Matt Golia here. Tony, I actually was there in the beginning. I was there at 7:30. I had to leave at 8 because that's when
I saw you. Thanks.
yeah, that's when my babysitter leaves, and I felt bad leaving my wife alone with the 3 kids at bedtime. So kind of a perfect example of why it's so important to have the ability to Zoom. Thank you very much. Lots of respect for changing your decision. I really appreciate it. I know the first board meeting I ever attended was probably about 2 years ago, and I put my hand up, and you said to the previous supervisor, "Hey, this guy hasn't spoken yet. Let's listen to him." So I'm glad to see that you still have that way of thinking about you. I find it interesting that the only person reminding the public that it's not a legal requirement is a member of another board who has done away with this, but hopefully that board looks at this board and realizes the right thing to do. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay,
Is there anybody
that's it.
else?
All right, so next item is approval of claims. So I'd like to motion, we approve the claims.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Polling of the board. Start with Andrea.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, tomorrow. Couple things. One, we addressed it during several
episodes last year, but we never got around to actually doing it. And before we get to that time of year again, I would like to have added to the agenda for next meeting, a discussion on what our town policy is going to be for Parks and Recreation to determine what constitutes a town-sponsored event. Before, because nothing was included in the budget in the fall with regards to upcoming potential town-sponsored events. We went back and forth. I know that our Parks and Rec committee had thrown some ideas around. Mary had forwarded them to us, but we never solidified anything. So before we get too far into the year and we get into heated debate again, I'd like that put on the agenda for us to discuss and come up with an appropriate policy so that we can address all groups and residents equally in the same. The second thing that I want added to the next agenda is the presentation of a proclamation to Bill Bongiorno, who happens to be in the audience here tonight. I've been asking for over a year, and I would like it finally added to the agenda.
Mary.
On the weekend of the 4th, I spent a great deal of time with my fellow residents from Vista, removing invasive species, removing trees that had fallen down, clearing all of Vista Park. And it was a lot of hard work, and I still have some scrapes and bruises, but the members of the Lewisboro Baseball Association were there. The Lewisboro Boy Scout Troop 101 was there. The members of the staff of Copia Garden and Services were there. Elner's Landscaping Service. There are other people whose names I've just blanked out on, and for that I'm most humbly apologizing, but it was a great caring for the community event. And I would like to try and organize another one so we can clean up the space by the cemetery and on the edge of the salt dome, so we can make sure that that land is safe from anything and pay it the proper respect that it deserves in the memory of the Honorable Henry Wallace. And I also want to say that I worked with Adam Oakes and other people in emergency services on the weekend. We had the very, very cold weather, and the first responders, the firefighters, the police officers, and the emergency medical service all did an incredible job. And I'm really grateful for their work and would like to work with the community in starting a Notify Lewisboro notification system. So if a tree goes down on Route 35, that you can get a heads up. So people can sign up at https://alert.ny.gov/, and then you can subscribe to check Lewisboro. We'll send out information on that and put it on the town website. We right now have almost 800 people signed up for it. And if we all got signed up for it, it would be something that would be very useful rather than not contacting people who aren't on Facebook. So it's a sensible 21st century approach to getting the word out.
Rich.
Thank you to our community, and thank you, Tony, for hearing our community.
Oh, I forgot one thing.
Go ahead.
It's African American History Month, so just be mindful of that. And the library has access to information if you want to read more about it.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of things just to tack on to the New York alert. Oh, I'm sorry. Dan, go ahead, Dan. No, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything.
You're good? Thanks. Okay.
I do, before, and I want you to be able to speak last, just two quick things. One, just a shout out to the Lewisboro Garden Club. thank you very much for coming and spending an hour and a half with my family clearing invasives in my backyard this weekend. I bid on the 2-hour service with them at their event last year, and they came through and everybody had a wonderful time. I personally did not do it. I do not have a green thumb, but my husband and my son were out there and they had a blast. Also, just one more reminder to everyone, if you haven't participated in any of the steering committee's master plan meetings, whether in person or by Zoom, the survey is open until the 15th. And I'm begging you all to participate. It'll take you 5 minutes, not even, to go to the town board's page, go to the comprehensive master plan steering committee and just scroll down. You'll see the survey there, and please take it.
Did you bring any meatballs that we were talking about?
I didn't make them yet, Rich.
Next turn.
All right, so just to tack on to what Mary said about the New York alert system, yes, we do have that notification system. We're hoping to use it more often than we've used in the
Use it
past.
judiciously.
Use it judiciously, but I would also like to remind folks that they can sign up for email alerts from the town. So you can go to our town website and sign up, and I think we have something like, I don't know, plus 1,800 people signed up already. So it's a good way to get information. And that's what I've been using in terms of getting not only the town email, but whenever I want to send some specific information, I've been using that. I want to also announce that we do have a building inspector, Kevin Kelly. So he started week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. It's doing great. He had his first fire call last night, so he missed half of the Super Bowl. There was a fire in Old Golden's Bridge, and he had to come up and review the condition of the structure.
Is that why they were getting like out of the lake? They were getting water last night?
Could have been, yeah. So thank you, Kevin, for responding to that call and for being part of the building department. I had a meeting last week I participated in a meeting with the Antenna Advisory Board. Carol, I know you were on that meeting as well. Just an update on the cell tower. We, as you all know, we had been considering the Salt Dome location for a cell tower. We also started discussions, and I give credit to the A and B for pushing this, the Antenna Advisory Board members. They had discussions with the South Salem Presbyterian Church, so we restarted those discussions. We got as far as getting Homeland Towers to consider that site as a site for potential infrastructure for wireless communication. The next step is for there to be they had an initial site visit. They're going to do a more detailed engineering review of the current structure and what needs to be done to support hopefully multi-tenant antenna or structure. And then of course they need to get the buy-in from AT&T and Verizon. Those are the two primary carriers that need to buy into having their equipment located there. So those discussions are going along. We're making some good progress, and hopefully within 3 weeks we'll have the results of the analysis and then present that to folks at a future Antenna Advisory Board meeting. Getting back to the public comment, my goal is, of course, to focus on government business. That's what I do here every day upstairs, and to continue the good work that we as a board have been doing. And hopefully we'll be able to look forward to continuing Zoom and being able to support everyone. I did hear, the constituents got a lot of feedback from a lot of people. So looking forward to that working out smoothly going forward. That's all I have to say. So nothing else.
Did anyone say yes, keep the comments off?
I'm not going to discuss that, but yes, there were actually. But thank you all very much for coming out tonight. This is a nice crowd. I'd like to see more people fill this room in because it's tough to sit out here and look into an empty room all the time. So thank you all for coming out.
Next meeting.
So the net announcements, the next meeting is on Monday, February 27th at 7:30 p.m.
Be
here
there.
at the townhouse, and it'll be a work session. I'd like to motion of going to executive session for an interview